And we are live. I wasn't paying attention. And I am Josh Engelman. I'm joined by Adam Scher. This is the NBA Deeper Dive. We are back to break down today's 11-game slate. At least it's 11 games right now. Who the hell knows if that's going to be the case in the next 2 hours, but we shall see. Before we do anything, hit that like button. I am taking the place of Laffy in this particular show. Well, technically, it's the boss man, Alex Baker. He's taking over for me tomorrow. But let's just say this is normally Laffy's gig. I want to make it seem like we never need him for the deeper dive. So hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. And shout out to PrizePicks for being the presenting sponsor of this video. Adam, how you feeling about this slate, man?
I really like it if nothing else happens. I think it's a really fun slate where there's some very good obvious plays, but then there's also some really good plays that are going a little bit overlooked because they're not quite as good as the obvious plays. What I expect to happen is that between now and lock, or now and the 10 p.m. games, 6 more people get ruled out with COVID or exposure to COVID or whatever the hell they're getting ruled out for, and that the whole slate just goes to shit is what I'm expecting.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. That's likely going to happen. We're already down Alvin Gentry. Marvin Bagley was just ruled out, health and safety protocols. Just feels like we're going to get more Kings at some point, but who the hell knows? George Niang is in it now as well. It's just going to be one of those things. And I think there's probably going to be more to come. So buckle up, everybody. Make sure you're here. Right now, this stream, it's going to run all the way up until lock at 7 o'clock. You don't want to be somewhere else. This is the spot. If news breaks, you'll be here. You should follow at Awesemo NBA. That will help you out as well for when news breaks. But chances are there's going to be more than one piece of news that comes up in the next 2 hours and 12 minutes. This is where you want to be to find out. I'm ready to dive in if you are, man. This is going to be a fun one.
Yeah, let's go.
We are kicking it off with the Houston Rockets. Last I had it was 8.5-point dogs. Let me double check that because that does feel like the one that I might not have correct. Although I feel like the line was bigger than that earlier. 9.5 now. But either way, the point still stands. Houston, big underdogs in Cleveland. And we've already got the change to this game that we had from the beginning. So we're talking about this one differently than we did on the strategy show earlier today. We're going to have no Christian Wood now. Ownership is wildly different. Very heavy ownership coming in to Şengün. He is 5,400 on FanDuel, 4,500 on DraftKings. Kenyon Martin Jr., KJ Martin, whatever we really want to call this guy. Something Martin is 35% owned across both sites. Jayshawn Tate's getting some love. Armani Brooks is getting some love. Josh Christopher on DraftKings is getting a bit of love. Where do you want to start with Houston?
Yeah, this is kind of a tricky spot because you take out Kevin Porter Jr., you take out Christian Wood, you take out Eric Gordon. There is a ton of production to go around. There's limited bodies here as well, but this is also a pretty brutal matchup going up against a Cleveland team that, one, is just a lot better, and two, is not bad at all defensively. So it's an interesting spot, but there's still just so much production, so many minutes potentially to go around. We're still waiting on a starting lineup here. My guess is DJ Augustine, Garrison Matthews, Jayshawn Tate. Sorry, Augustine, Brooks, Matthews, Tate, Tice is my guess. Going under that assumption, I expect there to be a 48-minute split at center between Tice and Şengün. They have not played a single minute alongside each other this season. That could change here. There's no real reason it can't. It's a big Cleveland front court. It's the Rockets, so who the hell who cares? It's not like that's not the difference in them winning or losing. So it could change. But my assumption right now is that you get 48-minute split there, probably 22 to Tice, 26 to Şengün, something like that. It makes Şengün look very, very good. The ownership, I think, is deserved. He's about a 1.2 DraftKings points per minute guy. He's 4,500 with power forward eligibility. Not a whole lot to be said there. He scores, he rebounds, he passes. He's a phenomenal offensive player already. So he looks really good. Kenyon Martin Jr., I'm expecting to come off the bench, but he played 28 minutes last game. I don't think I don't think you can just look at that and say, oh, he's going to do it again. But because the front court minutes are available, it makes a lot of sense for him to pick up minutes. I expect him to get around 28 minutes at 3,600. That makes him look like a reasonable option. I'm expecting the point guard minutes, for lack of a better word to be split between Augustine and Christopher, similarly to what I'm expecting between Şengün and Tice, except I think Augustine, if the game's competitive, I think Augustine is on the winning end. If the game is not, or if Christopher is playing well, I think you get him at the end of the game. So something like 24 minutes apiece makes sense. 26-22 in favor of Augustine would also make sense. This all is assuming Augustine's starting. I think Brooks is likely to play 34 minutes or so. He looks fine, but he is relatively expensive on DraftKings at 5,500. Jae'Sean Tate is somewhat interesting. He's actually been pretty good this season as far as contributing in every stat category. He's not a high usage guy, but he's around 20%. He has a double-digit rebounding percentage, double-digit assist percentage. Taking both Porter and Wood off the floor really actually opens up a lot for him since he can contribute in so many different ways. We've seen that already this year. So I do think at 5,800, he is pretty appealing too. So I guess I would say the only guys in the expected Houston rotation that I don't anticipate getting to whatsoever would be David Nwaba. And then I think Garrison Matthews is at a price point that I can't get there, even though I expect him to play a ton of minutes. I think you can get to any of Şengün, Martin, Christopher, Tate, Tice, Augustine, Brooks pretty easily.
Any thoughts? And I don't know if you noticed, we got an ownership update like 4 minutes ago or 5 minutes ago. So
yeah, that's what I have.
Yeah, okay. I didn't have that when I first started talking about ownership. Not that they were all that different. What are your thoughts on 5% owned Tice at 3,300? Seems a little low.
Yeah, it does, because it's I think it's correct if my assumptions are correct. If Daniel Tice starts and is on the losing end of a timeshare with Şengün, 5% makes sense. Like, you're getting 22 minutes from Tice at 3,300. He's playable, but he's unlikely to really do a lot. The reason I think that you could argue it's a little low is I could definitely be wrong. Tice could play 26 minutes and Şengün plays 22. I don't know what the reason for that would be. I think it's stupid, but it could happen. And if it does, then he's under-owned at 5%. And similarly, Şengün is over-owned at 47%. So on a slate this big, I don't think that's going to be a spot that I really go out of my way to target. But it is one that I think there's at least – the field has very, very clearly taken a stand on what they think is going to happen. It's what I think is going to happen as well, but there's no certainty that any of us are right.
Yeah, I just look at that in comparison to, like, say, Josh Christopher's minutes. Not that it's like, not that I don't think that he shouldn't be getting any ownership, but it really is weird to me to think that Tice would be low owned. I could see that number going from 5% to 10% once we get a starting lineup. If Tice is in that starting lineup, I think that just naturally comes up a little bit. That was the first piece that stood out to me, because the Şengün piece makes a ton of sense. The Martin piece makes a ton of sense to me. I'm not surprised by seeing either of those numbers. The Tice one being at 5% was the one that stood out most. What do you think of Christopher at 17? Like, is that piece too high to you?
That's what I'm kind of trying to figure out, because I understand why he's getting there. He projects to be, he projects as, like a 6x play on DraftKings, even if you only give him 22 minutes. If you give him more, then obviously he looks better. I think there's a good chance he gets more, because if he plays well, there's nobody stopping him from getting more minutes. If the game blows out, he's getting those minutes. So part of me kind of wants to go to 24 minutes. Alex has him at 24 right now. So it makes sense. But at the same time, let's say this game somehow is competitive to the end and, Christopher isn't playing out of his mind. I think you get the closing minutes from DJ Augustine. That's what we saw the one game Augustine started recently in place of Gordon. They did bring him back in. He got the 26 minutes. If Christopher does only play 22 minutes, then I don't want I don't want to be there if he's going to be like close to 20% owned. The other thing that could happen is, he could play alongside Augustine. He could get some of the minutes that I'm projecting to David Nwaba could go to Josh Christopher. And that's another way for him to get there. So I think the ownership makes sense. As far as there's multiple paths to success, I am a little concerned about, there are times where I think he plays low 20s and that's it.
All right. Is there anybody else you think we should be talking about right now for Houston, or anything that we've missed that we want to go ahead and touch on?
No, I think that's about it. Like, I would say Şengün is the clear top guy, just everything considered, projection, raw points, value, points per dollar, all of that. Tate, I think, looks good. Kenyon Martin looks like a very good value. Christopher looks like a very good value. Brooks, more of a tournament play. I do expect a lot of minutes, but he's also priced up. So Yeah, I mean, it's a team where there's a lot of minutes to go around. There's a lot of production to go around. They're also in a pretty tough spot. They have a 104 implied total. There's a lot of other good plays on the slate. So they are clearly an appealing team, though.
Okay. Yeah, I knew we were going to be spending a lot of time on Houston, so I wanted to make sure that we were able to hash them out fully. Let's move it over to Cleveland now. This is basically still looking like we thought it would earlier today. We still have the Q tag on Evan Mobley. I'm still going with the assumption that he is in for right now. I assume you are as well. I think he looks like the best play for Cleveland if he is playing. I'll happily get some Garland. Jared Allen is priced appropriately, but he's been fantastic. 1.25 fantasy points per minute on FanDuel for the past 30 days. We're seeing Markkanen pull some ownership, Ricky Rubio on DraftKings, Kevin Love on DraftKings. So what's your assessment of Cleveland for right now?
To answer one question quickly in chat, Thomas Hunley said, does playing Tice and Şengün together negatively affect one another, or is there not enough of a sample size to say how well they play together? If you're asking, like, do they cut into each other's production? They've played 0 minutes alongside each other. If you're asking about playing them in the same lineup, if it negatively affects each other, the answer is most likely, since they've played 0 minutes alongside each other, unless that were to change tonight. And the answer is yes. As far as Cleveland goes, this is a team that just looks like they have a lot of really good plays. We're waiting on the Evan Mobley news. As you said, he played the entire game last time out, so I'm expecting him to play, but it wouldn't be surprising if they just say, okay, we're playing the Rockets. They're shorthanded. Mobley can take this one off. But if he plays, I think he looks good at 6,900. This is a really good spot for him, not only because it's a pace up spot, but Houston's allowed the 3rd most blocks per game this year. They've allowed the most steals per game. Mobley's averaging about 2.5 blocks per 100 possessions, about 1.5 steals per 100 possessions. So it sets up really well for him there. Everything just looks really good for Mobley.
Okay. Yeah. And then for everybody else, it's just like, yeah, I want some Garland. I want some Allen. I want some Markkanen. I don't really have, they're not guys that I prioritize, but I am certainly going to be working my way through Cleveland. This is an excellent matchup against Houston. I want to get to these pieces. 14% owned Kevin Love doesn't feel like the best thing in the world for me at 4,800 on DraftKings, but at the very least, I sort of understand it.
Yeah, I understand it. Like I have him in for 20 minutes and 26 DraftKings points, so he looks pretty good. I think that the ownership probably, it shouldn't be any higher, I guess, put it that way. But I also like getting to Darius Garland at relatively low ownership. He stood out at 7,500 on FanDuel. He's getting like 9% ownership on DraftKings at 7,900. If this game is competitive, he's playing 34 or 35 minutes. If it's not competitive, there's a good chance he's the reason why. In the games without Sexton, he has a 28% usage rate, 36.5% assist percentage. He's been really good. You get a ceiling from Allen. Markkanen and Rubio look fine. There's a ton of good plays in this game.
Do you want to talk at all about the rest of this game, or are you ready to move on?
I don't think there's like a whole lot else to say. You're probably getting 26 minutes or so from Rubio. You're probably getting 30 to 32 from Markkanen. If Mobley were to sit, Markkanen looks better. Allen's rebounds probably go up a bit. Love's minutes are solidified. So like guys should start to look even better if Mobley were to sit.
All righty. Well, let's move it on to the Atlanta Hawks, 7.5 point favorites in Orlando, 223 total. No news for the Hawks. Same people that are normally out are out. Same people that are normally in are in. On the Orlando side, Mo Bamba is questionable. Everybody else that's normally out is out. Markelle Fultz getting slowly but surely closer to coming back, which should be interesting at the very least.
They even had him. This team, for a team as bad as they are, they have so many kind of decent players.
Yeah, it'll be interested to see how they integrate him. I don't know if we ever see John Isaac again, but that'll be pretty interesting too. I don't find anything to be super fascinating for Atlanta. Trae Young is about 10% owned across both sites. Collins and Herter are about 10% owned on FanDuel. A little bit of love going to Capella, but to me, not a single priority on Atlanta. Any starter you want to get to makes some sense, but nobody that I'll be clamoring to get into a lineup.
Yeah, there's several teams on this slate that I think just sort of look like good tournament teams, for lack of a better way of putting it. And Atlanta's one of them. Trae Young leads the way with 11% ownership on DraftKings. No issues there. It's a good spot against Orlando. He's likely to play 35, 36 minutes. We know he produces at a high rate. But even going down the list, Clint Capella at 8K, likely to give you 33 minutes or so. Certainly has a high ceiling. John Collins only getting 3% ownership. Cam Reddish, I mentioned on one of my tournament plays videos earlier, is just someone that it's not that he has a really high chance of success. It's just that he's getting virtually no ownership coming off of a game where he played 28 minutes. The only person really blocking him in the rotation is Luau Cavaro, which is basically nothing. If Reddish is playing well, he can get those minutes again. And against a team like Orlando that's so bad defensively, it's likely that Reddish plays well. So I do like him as a virtually unowned option at 3,800.
Surprised he's not pulling a little bit more ownership, especially given that shooting guard small forward designation. It's just another guy where, like, not that they're the same position or even the same price really, but I'd rather just take a shot on Cam Reddish at no ownership than Kevin Love at getting ownership. It's not all that important though. It's Atlanta. Orlando's a little bit more important. And I'm a little surprised they're pulling basically no ownership. Cole Anthony is the highest owned guy on DraftKings at 7.5%. Wendell Carter is the highest on FanDuel at 8%. I'd like to get to a little bit more Cole Anthony here, even with the 8K price. Well, 81 on FanDuel, 84 on DraftKings, even with that price tag. And then I see little bits of these guys. If this game stays competitive, like, I'm certainly more interested in Wendell Carter. If Bamba is out, I'm definitely interested in a little bit more Carter. Not that I think that his minutes are going to change at all, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be a bad thing for him. What are you doing with Orlando? Weird team today.
Yeah, it is. Anthony and Carter.
I got to stop you right now. Mo Bamba's out.
All right. Glad that the coach said he was going to play. Yeah, so that makes everything messier. It makes Carter look better, I think.
Yeah.
I need to pull up. I hadn't looked because I thought he was going to play, but it should benefit Carter. The one thing is that there's a good chance you get like Robin Lopez starting, so you're still going to have like another center playing alongside Carter. But without Bamba on the floor this year, Carter has averaged 1.15 DraftKings points per minute. With Bamba on the floor, he's at 1.04. So it is a bump for Carter. There's more rebounding opportunities. You potentially get more block opportunities as well when, if Orlando does go smaller around him. So Carter does look better, still at a price point where I don't think he's like a must play or anything, but he looks better. Cole Anthony, we know, looks good with Jalen Suggs out. He's good with Suggs in too, but he has a 29% usage rate without Suggs on the floor, 30% assist percentage. He should give you 34, 35 minutes. Those two look the best to me. If Robin Lopez starts at 3,100, it's okay. It's not anything I'm too excited about. You'll probably get better value opening up later in the night. I don't want to give a ton of, lock a lot of spots with Robin Lopez. It could be Mo Wagner as well. He'd be a little bit more exciting just because he produces at a higher level, but I think it's still pretty much Anthony and Carter.
Yeah. David Porter said it makes Lopez look better. Yeah. Going from no minutes to some minutes is definitely going to make you look a little bit better.
Yeah. He has started games this year.
It hasn't been a lot of them.
No, it's like one.
Yeah. The game on the 8th was weird just because everybody was in and then he played. Obviously, this most recent one with him getting time with Bamba getting hurt wasn't as surprising.
He played 31 minutes at his start. How many guys were out in that game?
They did have that stretch where like a lot of people were out.
Yeah. So that game was on.
It's been more than a month ago. So I don't. Oh, no, it wasn't. Holy shit. It was November 27th.
Okay.
Bamba was out. That's it. Well, Cole Anthony was out too, but that's not really affecting that.
Yeah, so they played him like an actual starter, which is weird, but
it's irrelevant.
Wagner was basically Robin Lopez's backup, and they split the center minutes. If you go 28 minutes for Lopez, he does look okay.
That's the question, though. Do you go 28 minutes on Lopez?
Okeke was in.
Everybody
was out, but Suggs was in, so that's basically a placeholder.
Yeah.
Hampton was in. Ross was in.
Yeah, they played 10 guys. No Bamba, no Anthony, replaced with Lopez and Suggs, and that's just a wash.
Yeah, I don't feel good about it, but I don't really know how else to go.
Wouldn't even be that all. Like, this is a matchup where it makes sense. If you're going to get 32 minutes out of Clint Capella, right. No reason it can't be 32 minutes out of Robin Lopez. Or call it 30 or 28 or whatever you want to say.
Yeah, and Collins playing next to him.
Yeah. Well, shit.
I don't know. You can go like 26. What I'll probably do just to try and keep it in check is like 26 Lopez, 18 Wagner, assume Carter plays a few, and then throw like 6 minutes to Mulder or something. Or 4 minutes, whatever that works out to.
Well, I mean, how many minutes were you giving Bamba?
29.
So you're really only looking to fill 3 minutes, no?
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, because I already had Wagner playing 18.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's if you want to say that this is a 1-for-1 swap, like I don't think that's the craziest stance in the world.
Neither do I. I just don't want that much Robin Lopez because I'm not confident in that.
No, I mean, he grades out as a pretty decent $3,100 play. That's for sure.
0.9
scary
DraftKings
too.
points per minute this season.
Yeah. If you see that he's starting, what do you go with? 26, 28?
Yeah, I think 26.
Okay. Keep your eye on it, folks. This one's going to be a tough one. We got anything else we want to say for Orlando?
So Robin Lopez has only played 49 minutes alongside Wendell Carter Jr. He has a 5% rebounding percentage in those 49 minutes.
I mean, not that he's ever been like he and his brother are kind of like do the dirty work type guys.
Carter's rebounding percentage is 21.5%.
Okay. That's low for him, right?
No. He's at 18 for the season.
Am I accidentally doubling his rebounding rate somehow? I'm looking at 38 right now. I feel like I accidentally typed something in incorrectly. I'll cross that bridge when I need to. All right. Good luck on Orlando, everybody. Enjoy this one. Anytime that Robin Lopez is a swing piece at 7:00, no less, it'll be a good time. Putting this one to bed?
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk schedule for the rest of the day. This one's easy. NBA Live before lock coming up next, 6 p.m. Takes you all the way to lock. You're going to need it today, so you don't want to miss that one. NBA ownership projections and NHL ownership projections are free as well, so you can get some free content if you head to awesemo.com. That is what you guys should do. Ownership projections, vital on a day like today. We move to Miami, where they are 7-point dogs in Philly. Things have changed for this game as well since we've talked this morning. Tyler Hero is officially out. I assume that now that I'm talking about something else bad is going to happen. So we've got Kyle Lowry and a very different team of Miami Heat players going today because we've got no Jimmy Butler. We've got no Bam Adebayo, no Markieff Morris, no whichever Martin plays for the Heat. Kyle Lowry, heavily owned on FanDuel at $7K. Makes sense to me. Don't know if I want 40% Kyle Lowry, but still looks pretty good. 23% owned on DraftKings. Gabe Vincent pulling about 10% ownership. Duncan Robinson's 10% owned on DraftKings. Max Strus is 22% owned on DraftKings. Another guy that's 3,100 on the slate, shooting guard, small forward. Where's your head for Miami?
A bunch of guys that look decent, but also don't stand out compared to other players. You mentioned it this morning, but this should be a slow-paced game. Miami's implied total is 99. Kyle Lowry looks fine without Hero, Butler, or Bam on the floor this year. He has a 23.8% usage rate, 40% assist percentage. That is all obviously good. Makes him look pretty solid. He's likely to play 38 minutes or so as well. Miami only has 10 active bodies. One of them is Udonis Haslem, which we assume they are not going to play unless they have to. So you should get a pretty tight rotation here. So I think he looks like the best option from Miami. Gabe Vincent looks fine at 4,500. He played 34 minutes last game. Normally, I wouldn't really feel confident in him getting back there, but when you take out Tyler Hero, I think that's pretty likely. Duncan Robinson probably plays around 34 minutes. Tucker probably plays 34 minutes or so. Makes him look reasonable. So Tucker also, like at 5,300, it's a pretty ugly play, but I don't think we can ignore that he's actually been a productive player without all these guys on the floor. It's still like, I think he's priced correctly. I don't think he's underpriced, but he's played 83 minutes now without Butler, Bam, or Hero. He's averaged 0.93 DraftKings points per minute. So I don't think
What's his true shooting?
What'd you say?
What's his true shooting in that time?
50%.
Holy shit. Okay.
You thought it was gonna be higher?
I just assume he just like he was like 6 of 8 in corner threes or something. It was just like, okay, let's roll that number back a bit.
Yeah, 13% rebounding percentage, 14% assist percentage.
Okay.
So, and in 237 minutes just without Bam and Butler, so ignoring Hero, he's at 0.88 DraftKings points per minute, 60% true shooting over that. So,
okay,
like I think my point here is that he's still not a great play, but I don't think it's fair to just look at him and say like, oh my God, Tucker's 5,300. I think that's about where he should be.
Right. You will find a lot better plays on this slate, I think, but it's not outlandish that he's 5,300.
Right.
How you feeling about Strus at 31?
I think he looks okay. Like, a 6x projection. If he's playing well, he could certainly cut into Gabe Vincent's minutes. I think there's a lot better plays, but if he's not going to get any ownership, then I don't mind getting some.
The NBA and Players Association have agreed to start testing vaccinated players without booster shots starting Friday.
Wait, what?
The NBA and the NBA Players Association will start testing vaccinated players that don't have booster shots on Friday.
As opposed to?
They were not testing vaccinated players until there was someone in their stream of life.
Oh, really?
That tested positive for COVID.
With all this, I just assumed they were testing everybody every day.
No, they had not been testing anybody like that unless they got a positive test in their group.
So basically starting Friday, we just take a break.
Certainly might, because we're going to see that, and then we're going to see a lot of dudes missing for boosters over the next 2 weeks, I think.
Right.
So we'll see where we end up there. Something to know. Anything else you want to touch on for Lowry? Do you think 40% for Lowry on FanDuel is crazy?
I don't think it's crazy in the sense that I think he is clearly one of the best plays. I think it's crazy in the sense that there's 11 games and there's just, there's still just so many ways to fail. You can't just completely ignore variance entirely. Yeah. This game could be a blowout. It's not likely to be, but it could be. And Lowry plays, 6 minutes less than people think he's going to. He could play poorly. That's something that happens pretty frequently for a lot of players. And there's just a lot of guys that are similar. Like we mentioned Darius Garland already for $500 more. I think this morning you had mentioned Brogdon being in that price range as well. So yeah, it's just the ownership makes sense as far as he's one of the best projected plays, but there's still plenty of alternatives that are going to be a lot lower owned.
Yeah, we have Garland $500 more expensive, 1/4 the ownership. We've got Malcolm Brogdon $500 more expensive, but more than half or less than half of the ownership. I don't love Kyle Lowry as a GPP play today, just because there are pretty natural pivots around him. On to Philly we go, where we have no George Niang, and we have even more questions because it's right now in the NBA. So Seth Curry, questionable. Furkan Korkmaz, questionable. We don't know if Embiid is officially in yet, but he went through shoot around. I assume that he's playing. Unless those guys are both out, I don't find Philly to be very interesting today. They look like one of the worst teams to me.
Yeah, exactly. The guys missing just don't really matter all that much. If you're going to get a little bit more playing time for, Thibault or Green or Korkmaz, I don't really care. If multiple other guys start getting ruled out, if Curry gets ruled out or Korkmaz gets ruled out or they both get ruled out, then you're getting to where, a $3,100 Matisse Thybulle, a $3,600 Danny Green start to make some sense. But right now it still pretty much just looks like Embiid is fine, but doesn't stand out. Harris is fine, but doesn't stand out. I have a really difficult time getting anything else.
I should have never mentioned this vaccination thing because chat is losing their minds. God, I'm dumb. That one's on me. Paul Reed got called up for Philly. I don't think that matters at all. Even if Seth Curry and Korkmaz get the axe on this one, I don't think we're getting Paul Reed for a reasonable amount of minutes that matter. You're going to have to see him beat out for that one. And even then, I don't think it matters.
Someone asked in between all the stupid takes about vaccines, if Lowry isn't in your lineup, are you automatically getting one other Heat guard at least? No. No. On a slate this big, you don't need to. Just you're basically just he can lose to Garland, he can lose to Brogdon, he can lose to any number of other guys. He doesn't even need to play that poorly.
All righty, we can push through on Philly here. Moving on to the Los Angeles Lakers, who made me feel a lot better because now they are 1.5 point favorites and all is right with the world. Dallas 213 total here. AD is 15% owned on FanDuel. That is the highest number on this slate for the Lakers. The next highest is 4.5 for AD on DraftKings. No one else is getting any ownership. I've got a really hard time wanting to get to LeBron, AD, or Russ today.
Yeah, pretty difficult for me as well. Davis looks the best to me. 10,000 on FanDuel, 10,400 on DraftKings. He's been the most productive of the three when everyone's healthy. I do think there's a chance you see a couple of extra minutes for these guys. You know, they already play 36 or 37, but wouldn't be surprising if you see that bumped a little bit with Howard and Monk and Horton Tucker being out. But in the context of the slate, still just pretty difficult to get to anything here. I will also mention Carmelo Anthony at 4,200. Same kind of thing. Pretty tough in the context of the entire slate, but he should get several more minutes tonight. And it's not like it would be the most surprising thing in the world if he played reasonably well.
This is such a weird team, and they're so bad.
They are,
but terrible. It's kind of crazy. It really is. LeBron being 11-2 on FanDuel is amazing. Morgan asked the chat in Discord, does Rondo play today? It shouldn't matter to you at all whether he does or not, but I think he's probably the backup point guard today.
Yeah, like my assumption is he plays 10 minutes.
Yeah. Only like they're running out of bodies, but that is he's not a play no matter what. We'll go to Dallas. No Luka Doncic. We've got Jalen Brunson pulling a ton of ownership, 43% owned on FanDuel, 26% owned on DraftKings. I think that's more than reasonable on a day like today. I don't see his 40% ownership to be nearly as crazy as it is for someone like Kyle Lowry today. Brunson's just a completely different player when Luka Doncic isn't on the floor. Big time usage bump, assist rate bump, clear across the board. Only other guy pulling any sort of reasonable ownership, Porzingis is 10% on both sites. What are you doing with Dallas?
They look like one of the, well, not they as in the whole team. Porzingis and Brunson look like two of the better plays on the slate. Porzingis has been great without Doncic this year, around 1.3 to 1.4 fantasy points per minute. Usage rate between around 30% in the entire games he's played without Doncic, about 28.5% without Doncic on the floor. Should play 32 minutes or so, you would assume. Jalen Brunson looks good as well. He's been about 1.07 DraftKings points per minute. One minor thing or somewhat minor thing to mention is in the last couple of games, he hasn't played quite as many minutes as we would expect. And that's even accounting for, him losing garbage time. 2 games ago, he lost a couple of minutes at the end of the game, but he'd only played about 30 and a half. Last game, he only played about 16 minutes in the first half. He was tracking to play around 32 minutes again. So in previous games with Doncic out, you had seen him playing 36 minutes. You are just seeing a little bit deeper rotation from Dallas. Trey Burke's getting all the backup minutes, but you also have had Josh Green in the rotation. So I think Brunson still looks very good, but I do think that he it seems like they're playing him a couple minutes less than he was earlier in the year in these situations.
Magic starting lineup: Anthony, Harris, Franz Wagner, Okiki, Carter.
Well, I kind of like that. I mean, Lopez is the better fantasy play. Well, would have been the better fantasy play, but I always just want an excuse to play Okiki.
There you go. Well, there's your excuse. Anything else here for Dallas?
No, not really. I mean, Tim Hardaway should chuck off the bench, but doesn't matter a ton. Actually, yeah, Maxi Kleber's played a ton in the last couple of games. Neither game was competitive to the end, but I do think there's a pretty good chance you get 26 to 28 minutes from Maxi. Not any sort of priority, but just a lower ownership $3,800 guy that you could potentially get to.
All righty. On to the Indiana Pacers at the Milwaukee Bucks, 2.5-point favorites, those Pacers. For Indiana, Q-tag still on Justin Holiday. On the Milwaukee side, we've got a Q-tag still on Chris Middleton. George Hill is back, but no Giannis, no Brook Lopez, no DiVincenzo, no Wes Matthews, no Cousins, no Ogilvy. Not a lot going on for Milwaukee, and this is still basically a coin flip game. For Indiana, it's basically the same thing we say every night. Brogdon, Sabonis, LeVert, Turner, depending on your particular cup of tea or which site you're playing on, those 4 guys are very much in play. I like LeVert and Brogdon quite a bit on a day like today. Duarte, probably just a little bit too expensive for me right now. O'Shea Brissett, an okay-ish value on DraftKings, but we are slowly but surely opening up a lot of those kind of plays. So not the same sort of play I thought we saw earlier today. Anything new for you for Indiana?
No, just one of the teams that I do like quite a bit in tournaments because I don't expect there to be a lot of ownership coming in there. Right now on DraftKings, we have Brogdon as the highest owned guy at 13%, Sabonis and LeVert at 7%, Turner at 6%. it's not a bad spot here. They're likely to play a lot of minutes. LeVert's been playing backup point guard behind Brogdon, which is nice. When he plays alongside Sabonis without Brogdon on the floor this year, he has a 32% usage rate. So the rotations that Indiana's been running recently does benefit LeVert a little bit, in addition to the fact that he's playing a ton of minutes. So I think he looks good. Brogdon looks good. Sabonis looks good. Turner's been playing 34 plus minutes when he avoids foul trouble. So any of these guys in tournaments, I think are pretty solid plays.
It's just normal standard issue stuff for the Pacers. A little bit different though on the Milwaukee side today. Assuming Chris Middleton is in, Drew Holiday is an exceptional play. 30% owned on FanDuel, 40% owned on DraftKings. Just becomes a completely different player when Giannis isn't around. That will get even better if Chris Middleton is out. Chris Middleton is a fantastic play if he is able to play today. He becomes a significantly better option when Giannis is out, and Giannis is out. Grayson Allen looking good at 4K across both sites. Bobby Portis on DraftKings at 7,100. Pat Connaughton on DraftKings at 5K. All these guys look viable. We do need the Middleton news, but everybody that I already mentioned is already good if he's in.
Yeah, so Middleton is a big piece in that it kind of just makes Milwaukee a totally different team as far as what we want to do for DFS. But with or without Middleton, Holiday looks very good. Portis looks very good. Connaughton and Allen both look good. If Middleton is out, then it opens the door, makes those guys all look better. And it opens the door for anybody off the bench, kind of to take shots at. But mostly it just, bumps up the guys that already look good anyway. If Middleton's in, he looks very good as well.
Korkmaz out.
Yeah, and Embiid and Curry game time decisions.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Korkmaz out, I don't really care about. If Curry is out, then I think any of Milton, Green, Thibault start to look appealing. If Embiid is out, just get as much Drummond as you can.
Correct. All right. I don't know if you said this because I was grabbing that Korkmaz news. If Middleton is out, who else becomes good?
If Middleton is out, so not necessarily anybody. I'm expecting that you just get minutes kind of spread out off the bench. Jordan Nwora benefited in this situation earlier in the year, but he's also been surpassed in the rotation by guys like Hood. I assume Thanasis plays. Mamukelashvili, I think, probably plays. Javonte Smart's been playing ahead of Nwora, so it's tough to trust Nwora anyway, but I think he could benefit potentially just because he's capable of scoring.
Weird game here. That news is going to be very important. Really anxious to see when it ends up coming out, but sign me up for a little bit of Doc Rivers says Matisse Thybulle will likely start tonight. Also reiterates that this starting lineup is fluid. So thank you very much for absolutely nothing there, Doc. Come on now. Will likely start, and the starting lineup is fluid. I'm sure it is. Who's going to start? Who else is apparently going to start today, Doc? Who are you moving into the starting lineup? What's the fluid part here? I mean, I agree that it's fluid if like Curry and Embiid don't play, but if Curry and Embiid are in, I don't think the starting lineup's all that fluid.
Yeah, I mean, Danny Green, I guess.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know who he's planning on benching.
Oh, I thought he had said, I think I misunderstood. I thought you said that Thybulle's likely to start, but that it's fluid.
Doc, that is the quote. Doc Rivers says Matisse Thybulle will likely start tonight, period. Also reiterates that this starting lineup is fluid.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if Thybulle's starting tonight, I don't know what change they're making.
That's the only part that could change.
Yeah, I would be shocked if Maxey, Seth Curry, Tobias Harris, or Joel Embiid don't start. In particular, those last two.
Yeah.
All righty. Anything else for Milwaukee?
I don't think so. Just obviously keep an eye on the Middleton news.
All righty. Well, let's talk a little bit about the presenting sponsor of this show. That would be PrizePicks. I've talked a lot about PrizePicks today. They are the presenting sponsor of my contenders videos in the morning. They're the presenting sponsor of the process show. Got them for the strategy show. Got them again here for the deeper dive. If you use the promo code Awesemo when signing up, you can get a $100 first match deposit bonus. That's awesome. You can also get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum when you sign up and make a deposit at PrizePicks. hit you up with an email 24 to 48 hours after so you could redeem that month. What is that quote from Doc? Is that a real thing? That can't be a real thing. All right. I'll hit on that one after this read. Good God. Get ready for this one. You don't have to worry about sharks, optimizers, mass entries, any of that stuff at PrizePicks. You're basically building, if you want to, up to 5-person prop cards for player props. You can get 10x your entry fee. You can make these across sports. You can download the app in the App Store, Google Play, or go to prizepicks.com. We have free PrizePicks tools on the site to help you make your best decisions. I'm going to hit Adam with 1 or 2 prize picks. They were a little bit different earlier today. We're going to see what has changed now that we're a little bit further into the day. So we're going to go to the fantasy score options. First guy up. How do you feel? Who's going to be a good one? Over under 33.5 for Wendell Carter Jr.
Over.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I got him at 36.5. That one feels pretty good to me. Let's transition over to what would be another fun one for today. Kyle Lowry, 37 fantasy points.
Over.
Yeah. I have it at 37.3, but I would be more likely to lean towards the over here. One final pick for you. LeBron James, 50 fantasy points.
Under.
Yeah, I got him at 45. So I will take the under on LeBron James on this one. Thank you to PrizePicks for being the presenting sponsor. Don't forget to sign up. You're leaving a lot of money on the table if you don't. You ready for this quote from Doc Rivers?
Yeah.
Doc Rivers says the Sixers are not scared to play Joel Embiid and Andre Drummond together. Says they worked on it in training camp.
Didn't they do that? No. Drummond played alongside somebody last year.
Dwight Howard, I believe. No, that can't
be.
It was Embiid. It was Howard and
Howard.
Yeah. They only had 7 guys or whatever, so they were playing alongside each other. Yeah. You should be afraid to play those 2 guys together. Also, who's asking that question? Why is that even coming up?
Yeah. What member of the media was like, Doc, why aren't those 2 playing alongside each other? Are you scared? And he was like, no.
Like, it's obviously not the case, but that just makes me feel like we're about to get 6 dudes from the Sixers ruled out today.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah. Like, if you play Joel Embiid and Andre Drummond for more than a minute alongside of each other, and like not just to try to get a rebound at the end of the game on a free throw, like what are you doing here?
Yeah, I mean, that's how it feels to me. Like Matisse Thybulle likely to start, but the lineup is fluid. Also, I don't mind playing Drummond and Embiid alongside each other.
Yeah, I'm waiting 20 minutes. We're going to find out that Tobias Harris is out.
It just feels like we're about to get a massive amount of Sixers not playing.
Buckle up for that bad boy. That is a ridiculous quote. So let's move it on to the New Orleans Pelicans at the Oklahoma City Thunder. Actually, 2,150 people in here, 250 likes. That ain't bad, but it's not enough. Hit that thumbs up. We're doing some pretty good work here on a tumultuous NBA day. I think you can reward us with a couple thumbs up. Pelicans, 4.5-point favorites in Oklahoma City. For the Pelicans side of this ball game, we've got no Zion. Surprise, surprise. Didi Louzada still out with his suspension for 12 more games. And whatever Dalton Hams is also out. So no real news from an injury perspective for the New Orleans Pelicans. Lou Dort out for the Thunder. And I believe all those guys aren't with the G League anymore, but let me check it out quick. Just add another wrinkle. All right. Oklahoma City Thunder. Nope. Maladon, Poku, Isaiah Roby, per the injury report at 5:30, all still on assignment with the G League team. So we should not be seeing them. For New Orleans, Josh Hart and Joe Val are about 15% owned on FanDuel. No one else in this entire game on either site is more than 10%. You get into the Pels.
I think Joe Val looks good. I assume he plays around 32 minutes if this game's close. He's only 8% owned. He's relatively expensive on DraftKings, but he's like a 1.25 to 1.3 fantasy point per minute guy. So he looks pretty good. I mentioned it this morning, but I also don't hate getting to a little bit of Hernan Gomez at 0 ownership. He's 4,200. He's averaging like 1.4 DraftKings points per minute this year. There is certainly no floor whatsoever, but if he gives you 15 to 16 minutes, he projects reasonably well. If anything happens as far as foul trouble, blowout, whatever, and he gets more minutes, that's actually the spot where, he could just go absolutely nuts.
These quotes are ridiculous. Christian Wood is officially out for tonight, but that's not like super interesting. We were already going that way. Silas says Usman Garuba is in the mix tonight. They have 10 players available and Garuba is number 10.
Yeah, I mean, I'd given him 0 minutes, so that kind of helps, I guess.
I gave him 6 or 8 or something like that. But I mean, if you're not going to be in the mix when you only have 10 active bodies and you're one of those 10, you're probably not in the mix ever. So
I hope he plays well. I have his Top Shot debut.
I hope he plays well too. He's an incredible defender. Do you have anything else you would like to add for the New Orleans Pelicans?
No, Ingram, Graham, Alexander Walker, all reasonable, but on this slate, which already has a lot of really good plays and seems like it's about to get a lot more, they don't really stand out.
Oklahoma City. Josh Giddey is 22% owned on FanDuel. I think you're going to be able to find better options than that. Not that he's not an okay option on FanDuel. Next highest owned guy in this game, either site, FanDuel or DraftKings, is 8% owned Kendrick Williams. What are you doing with Oklahoma City?
Not a whole lot. I think that Williams looks fine at 3,500. I'm expecting him to start in place of Dort. I think you get Giddey, Gilgeous-Alexander, Williams, Baisley, Robinson, Earl. But if he starts, there's a good chance you get 30 to 32 minutes. He's around a 0.75 fantasy point per minute guy, so he looks okay. Trey Mann at 3,200, assuming he plays 24 to 26 minutes, looks okay as well. But also need to keep in mind that a lot of those minutes would be alongside Gilgeous-Alexander, where he's been essentially useless this year. There's not much that stands out to me here compared to alternatives on this slate.
I don't have anything to add for Oklahoma City. It's just not the spot. So we move it on. Charlotte Hornets at the San Antonio Spurs. Hornets are 3-point dogs in this one. On the Charlotte side, it looks like we got Mason Plumlee back. We still have no LaMelo Ball, no Ish Smith, but Mason Plumlee and Jalen McDaniels are both in. So this team is not nearly as shorthanded as they had been in the past. Cody Martin, still projected for 12% ownership on FanDuel. I think you're going to be able to find better options than that. After that, no one's really pulling any ownership. These guys have high prices from everybody being out. They're all like okay-ish plays. The guys that play a ton, Bridges, Rozier, Hayward, Oubre, PJ Washington, they're all okay-ish plays. There are no priorities in Charlotte any longer.
That's how I see it as well. I mentioned a couple of these guys in the tournament plays video earlier, but it's in the, in the context of they're going under-owned, but they're still not high probability plays. So they're just guys that, you're kind of mixing in as contrarian pieces that do have high ceilings. Terry Rozier at 7,300 played 33 minutes in his first game back. One positive that I took away from that was he played it in garbage time. So it seemed like Charlotte was looking to get him some run, and that it's likely he plays a couple more minutes tonight. He's been about 0.95 fantasy points per minute without LaMelo this year. Bridges still looks fine. He's averaging almost 37 minutes per game this year. That shouldn't change even with these guys coming back, because it's been the case all season long. He's about a fantasy point per minute guy. So they're pieces that are going under-owned relative to their chances of success. But there's also, as more and more stuff opens up, there's just going to be plays that look even better that are also going under-owned.
Yeah. I wish we can get to more Charlotte here, but those prices just aren't where we need them to be. We move to San Antonio. Certainly some ownership coming in here on the Spurs. We did get some Spurs news earlier in the day. Lonnie Walker is out for this one. So there is a little bit of impact somewhere. DeJounte Murray, 21% owned on FanDuel right now at 9,300. No one on DraftKings is more than 10% owned. That is Jake Puddle at 9.9. Jake Puddle also 12% owned on FanDuel, along with Keldon Johnson at 14%. But I'm going to hit you with the first question. What is the impact of Lonnie Walker being out?
I think it's likely to just make the rotation. So I think that you get like Bryn Forbes or Ketabate Diop in the rotation, but I think that it also likely gives a couple more minutes to Keldon Johnson. It probably gives a few more minutes to Devin Vassell. It makes it so the Spurs, they were already a team that I really liked getting to in tournaments just because this matchup is so appealing against Charlotte, but it makes it look even a little bit more appealing. If you can go from 32 to 34 minutes on Johnson or go from 22 to 26 minutes on Vassell, it opens those guys up a little bit. Jakob Poeltl, I think, looks very good. He's 7K, but this is a spot where he should have a lot of success. He's likely to give you 30 to 32 minutes. It's just a pretty, appealing spot for him. DeJounte Murray looks good. Derek White's been playing really well over his last 10 games. He has a 23.5% usage rate. He's averaged 1.14 DraftKings points per minute. So any of those guys in tournaments at low ownership are pretty strong plays. Going up against Charlotte this year has sort of just been a cheat code because they play really fast and they don't play defense. So having a bunch of guys here that you can mix and match into lineups at low ownership, I think is a really good spot to be in.
It's a matchup between the number 5 team in pace and the number 7 team in pace, at least in my metrics. You're going to be in and around that anywhere you look, but 2 fast teams and not great defense out of Charlotte. Probably a little bit better now with Mason Plumlee back, but still not like any sort of world beaters either. All righty. Anything else here for the Spurs? What do you think about 20% ownership on Murray on FanDuel? I don't mind that at all at 9,300.
No, that's a really cheap price tag.
Yeah. Just want to make sure I'm not crazy. Just teeing myself up for that one, but I think we're going to be all right.
No, I made the mistake of replying to a Ben the Better tweet while I'm also getting, NBA notifications. So trying to like mix between replies and notifications keeps me from making fun of you.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good. Hey, I can tell you this much. Per Neil Orfield, friend of the program in chat, you mentioned that you are 11-1 against Ben the Better in head-to-heads. I know that I would do better than that. So that's the best I could hang my hat on. I'm better than him.
Yeah. But I lost the most recent one, which apparently was the reason for him to talk shit on Twitter just now.
Well, to be fair, I mean, we only care about the most recent result. So as far as I'm concerned, you are 0-1 against him. And that is the way that I would report that stat. That's some ESPNing of the world, Yeah,
0-1 in the last month.
Yep. Minnesota, 3-point dogs. Nope, 4.5-point dogs in Denver, 223 total. On the Minnesota side, Q tag on D'Angelo Russell. I'm assuming that he plays, but we do not know if that is true or not. On the Denver side, Will Barton probable, Aaron Gordon probable, Austin Rivers questionable. We'll see what that matters. For Minnesota, Anthony Edwards is 17% owned on FanDuel. The next highest owned guy in this game on either FanDuel or DraftKings is 7% owned Jared Vanderbilt on FanDuel. I actually like that number. I think that's a little low. How are you feeling about Minnesota? Because there doesn't appear to be a lot here.
Not feeling great about Minnesota. It's just not a very appealing matchup going into Denver. It's a slow team. I don't think the pricing is that favorable on DraftKings, at least. Russell at 8,400, Edwards at 8,300. Just like obviously those guys have high ceilings. They're not bad plays, but there's just a lot of guys that I would get to before them. Same can be said for Karl Anthony Towns. Like not only is he a center, but even at that price point, I would rather get to Murray. I'd rather get to Trae Young in that price range. So pretty tough to go there. The only thing on DraftKings that seems like remotely appealing to me is Pat Beverly at 4,900. He played 34 minutes last game. You're likely to get low to mid 30s from him again here. He's around a 0.9 fantasy point per minute guy and probably not going to get much ownership. So don't mind him as a value option, but I also think there's just a lot of better plays.
All right. I wish I had more for you for Minnesota, but just doesn't appear to be that kind of team today. On the Denver side, Nikola Jokic looking better and better as every piece of news comes out today. 11.5 on DraftKings. Sorry, 11.5 on FanDuel, 12.2 on DraftKings, projected for 25 to 30% ownership. I don't want to say that I think it's more warranted than it was earlier today, but it's certainly a lot easier to get to him. Will Barton is currently projected for 20% ownership on FanDuel at 6K. That's a little concerning to me, but I guess I understand it. I don't really have any other interest in anything from Denver. So talk to me about Jokic, especially now that he is very, very easy to get to with the amount of value we have.
Yeah, I mean, Jokic looks great. I already wanted to get to him earlier, whenever I could, but he's clearly the top projected guy on the slate. I think I have him by like 12 or 13 points. Alex has him by more than by 14. So, I mean, I
got him by 11.
Yeah, there's just nothing in his like tier, and you're getting more and more value opening up in terms of cheap guys. We already had a bunch of strong mid-range guys. It's going to be really easy to make lineups that have a high ceiling and then also get to the clear top play on the slate. So I anticipate having tons of Jokic.
Yep. And I think that makes a ton of sense. Any thoughts on the 20% owned Will Barton on FanDuel? Feels oddly high.
What's the salary?
6K. Like that's
good.
It's
a cheap salary, assuming he's going to play 34 minutes or so. But with all the good plays on the slate, that seems a little aggressive.
Like I understand that these are different positions, but Aaron Gordon is also 6K and 5% owned. Like, I don't think Barton beats Gordon that frequently on his own team,
Like,
let alone looking at any of the other 10 games.
Right. Like I have Barton by a couple of points, but
yeah, right. I don't know. It's just a weird one for me. We'll see where that actually ends up. I don't have anything else I want to add though for Denver.
nah, get Jokic.
All righty. We'll call it 2,500 people in here. We're up to 416. 500 is in our sights. If you haven't done it yet, hit that thumbs up. We're bringing you guys the goods. And this show, it's not going anywhere. We're live all the way up till 7. Adam and I get out of here at 6 o'clock, but live before lock will take over for us. On to the Memphis Grizzlies. 3-point dogs in Portland today. 217 total for Memphis. We have, where the hell did Memphis go? Why is Memphis? Oh, yep, that's because E is before I in the alphabet. No Ja Morant, no Brandon Clark, no Zaire Williams in this one. On the opposite side for Portland, no CJ McCollum. He did get some better imaging today. No Cody Zeller as well. His is weird, but it's not important. He's not playing today. Depends on which site you're playing on, though, where you're going to get interesting pieces. Tyus Jones is 13% owned on FanDuel, just 5 on DraftKings. It's more expensive there. Dylan Brooks, 18% owned on FanDuel, 10% on DraftKings. He's more expensive on DraftKings. Jaren Jackson Jr. is still just 6,400 on FanDuel, power forward, center eligible. He is pulling 26% ownership. I think that's warranted. He's $800 more expensive on DraftKings. A little bit of ownership coming into Desmond Bane. I like the fact that he's only 6% owned on FanDuel. Those are the 4 guys I am most interested in for Memphis today. What are you doing with the Grizzlies?
Yeah, so they're more expensive on DraftKings, but they're still not overpriced. They're just like correctly priced. They certainly have high ceilings here. This is another team that I think just looks really good in tournaments. Not that you're going to end up with, 2 or 3 Memphis guys in the same lineup, but, just getting to some Brooks, getting to Bane, getting to Jackson. They're all, we talked about it this morning, but they're all volatile enough that it kind of just keeps their salary in check. It keeps their ownership in check because people are afraid to go there. But if Jaren Jackson manages not to foul people, he's likely to play 32 minutes or so. He's averaged 1.3 DraftKings points per minute without Ja Morant on the floor this year. Desmond Bane has about a 24% usage rate without Morant on the floor. He's likely to give you around 32 minutes. Dylan Brooks has a 30% usage rate. His shot doesn't fall all that often, but any game where he shoots at an above average rate, he's just going to destroy a $6,400 salary. Tyus Jones is likely to give you 32 to 34 minutes at 6,100 and 5% ownership. So any of these guys, again, not that I expect to be building around any one of them as far as my highest owned guy on a slate like this, but being over the field here and using these as low owned, high upside pieces, I love getting to Memphis tonight.
Yeah, I think they're very interesting on DraftKings given that low ownership. I still think they're interesting on FanDuel given the actual ownership that they're getting, but it is appealing on DK if you're going to get these guys very low owned. Anything else you want to touch on for Memphis? I know we don't really have to wait on any news here. I don't know if you mentioned anything about Melton at 4,900. Is that even appealing to you in a tournament?
I didn't mention him. I think if I land on a couple of Melton lineups, that's fine. But it's just he's kind of in like that Guillermo Hernan-Gomez bucket where it's kind of just like an insane play, but it also, like, if he just gets a few more minutes than you're expecting, it can really, really do well.
All righty. We'll go to Denver. We'll go to Portland. Lots going on here. Tricky team. We've got Dame 16% owned on FanDuel at 8,700, 7% owned on DraftKings. I think Dame is under-owned at 8,700, if I'm being honest. We've got Norm Powell projected for 20% ownership on FanDuel at 5,700. He's $800 more expensive on DK. We've got Yusuf Nurkic projected for 17% ownership on FanDuel, where he is 5,900. He is $1,900 more expensive on DK. So let's start on the DraftKings side. No one's getting any ownership for Portland. That's really appealing to me.
Yeah, but there's just teams that I think look a little bit better. I don't mind Dame at 7%. I don't mind Larry Nance at 6%. I think those are fine. But at the same time, I prefer the Spurs guys. Like I prefer several guys on the Spurs. I prefer several guys on Memphis. I think there was another team we talked about that was similar. Atlanta, maybe. It's just, I think the Portland guys are fine. I think that there's some guys in better spots that I like a little bit more. We also haven't talked about Washington yet. They have several plays that I like. So not going to talk anyone off of getting to low owned Lillard ever, or, low owned Larry Nance or anything, but there are just teams as a whole that I like a little bit better that are similarly owned.
What are your thoughts on 16% owned Dame at 8,700 on FanDuel?
I think that's low. The only thing, and actually, I guess like with multi-position eligibility, enough of those guys are shooting guard eligible too. Like back in the day, I would have said like the only argument is that, you can only roster two and it's a high upside position, but there's enough guys that have shooting guard now that seems low for 8,700. Like, I guess it's mildly concerning that, he played the back-to-back and played like 100 minutes last night. But at the same time, Lillard is used to playing a ton of minutes every time he's on the floor.
Right. All righty. What do you want to do with Nurk? I think that's an interesting talking piece because the $5,900 price tag on FanDuel is clearly ridiculous. And he's getting some ownership. But we're talking about a center and only center eligible.
For sure, underpriced on FanDuel. On DraftKings, I have a hard time getting there at 7,800. But on FanDuel, he's underpriced for sure. The issue just kind of comes down to the opportunity cost at the position, since you can only roster one. Even let's say Nurkic goes for 36 or 38 FanDuel points. That's obviously very good at his salary. But when you think about what the tournament winning lineups are going to look like, there's a pretty good chance that that's still ceding 30 raw points to Nikola Jokic at least, that you can make up value at other positions. So it kind of puts you in and that's not even mentioning all of the other potential centers, Valanciunas. I don't have anybody else off the top of my head, but there's plenty of other high upside centers on this slate. So I do think it's really ownership dependent. Like Nurkic, if he were to play 32 minutes, he can get you 45, 50 fantasy points potentially. So I think he is a good tournament play, but you really want to weight the ownership relative to Jokic and then also relative to just some of the other alternatives.
All righty. Anything else here for Portland?
Nope.
On to your Washington Wizards. And just to be clear here, Adam, we're not going to the Clippers. We're going to the Wizards. They are 2-point favorites in Sacramento, 226 total. For Washington, looks like we got word. I don't know if it's totally official yet, but it's looking like Kyle Kuzma is going to be playing today. Bradley Beal is 11% owned across both sites. Kuzma is not really pulling any ownership as of right now. That's appealing to me. 12% owned Dinwiddie on FanDuel, 10% owned KCP on DraftKings, 10-ish% owned Montrezl Harrell across both sites. Daniel Gafford is 2% owned on FanDuel, something to keep in mind. How are you handling Washington here? Because facing Sacramento is generally a recipe for success.
I really like the Wizards here. Sacramento is a fast-paced team that doesn't defend. Washington is getting pretty inexpensive. This has been a team that has been really difficult to roster all season long, but you're starting to get some discounts. Bradley Beal at 8,500, I think looks fine. There are guards that I like a little bit more that are a little bit less expensive. Dinwiddie at 5,500. They've kind of been lying to us for a while now about him getting more playing time, but even if he plays 30 minutes or so here against the Kings, he looks like a good option at 5,500. Kuzma at very low ownership looks pretty good at 5,900. Where I'm really, really interested, though, is the center position. Harrell is 5,100 on DraftKings. Gafford is 4,800. The opportunity cost at center is always high, but it's not as high on DraftKings since you can roster two of them. Like you can roster one of these guys and still get to Jokic. They split 48 minutes pretty much every game. There's no real reason to think that they're not going to here when so far this year, Sacramento just doesn't play small. So you're expecting them to get 48 minutes. You can't really go into a game with which one, is the most likely to play more. But if you just give them each 24 minutes, they both project as very strong values here at their respective salaries. And there's a lot of games where, Harrell ends up playing 26 to 28 or Gafford avoids foul trouble and plays like 26. Both of these guys have massive ceilings. They're both very good point per dollar plays. Obviously, don't roster them together. Sorry, I meant fantasy point per minute players. They're both very good. Don't roster them together, but I love the ceiling and lack of ownership going to these two.
Yeah, that's like the Gafford at 2% on FanDuel. He is not far away from just getting a couple extra minutes and that looking really good. So, especially when you see Montrezl Harrell getting 14% ownership, $400 cheaper. I get it. He should. He also has power forward eligibility. So I understand why you get to more Harrell there, but that just makes me want to pivot in this game specifically to Gafford. Lots to like here because
also,
Sacramento's just going to make you look better.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, Sacramento's just going to make you look better.
Yeah. Sacramento also this year allowing 5.5 blocks per game to opponents. That's the 7th most in the league. Daniel Gafford in particular sets up pretty nicely for him. So far this year, he has averaged 4.5 blocks per 100 possessions.
All righty. Anything else you want to talk about for Washington?
No, I think that's it. KCP is getting some ownership. I think that's fine. He's 4,100. He should play 28 to 30 minutes. He's KCP. He's not exciting. He's just kind of a last guy in.
For Sacramento, Rashawn Holmes is doubtful. I haven't seen anything that makes me think he's going to play. Marvin Bagley has entered the health and safety protocols. So we got some interesting minutes to go around potentially in Sacramento. Is it Mo Harkless? Does Terrence Davis play again? Do they just play Alex Len and Tristan Thompson next to each other because it's the Kings? I have no idea. Harrison Barnes is 12% owned on FanDuel. That is the highest ownership of anyone on the Kings on the FanDuel side. No one is in double digits on the DraftKings side. I don't want to say it because it's hard, but I think Sacramento is really interesting today.
They became more interesting with Bagley out. So this team in general, before Bagley was out, I thought it was about as difficult a team to project as you could get because you had the coaching change midseason. You've had a ton of blowouts recently where you can't really put together what their closing lineup looks like. Their head coach is not coaching tonight, so that can lead to different rotations, depending on what the assistant coaches do. You take Bagley out, though, and it does make things look a little bit better. Earlier, I had projected 12 guys to get minutes here just because I have no idea what the Kings are doing. But with Bagley out, I'm assuming we get the same starting lineup as last game, in which case you're probably going to end up getting 24 to 26 minutes from Metu, which makes him look okay. Alex Len probably plays around 24 minutes, which makes him look like a decent value at 3,200. But Bagley being out also makes it so, like, we've been seeing a ton of minutes recently from Tyrese Halliburton prior to the last few games, but then they messed with the rotation and started adding bodies in. And it was really difficult with Bagley in to project Halliburton for more than like 30 or 32 minutes because Barnes wasn't likely to get any time at the 4. Now I think there is a good chance that you get some smaller lineups 1 through 4 from Sacramento and you get back to like 34 minutes from Halliburton. You get back to, 32 to 34 from Barnes. Fox probably plays 36. So it really just opens up a lot, not to the point where any of these guys stand out as top options, but to the point where with Bagley in, I didn't really have much interest at all outside of the cheap front court players on this team. With Bagley out, I do think it at least makes things look a little bit better for Barnes, for Halliburton, for Fox.
This team is going to be so tricky tonight.
And also just be ready to swap off of whatever Kings you have, because 1, there's a chance that we get more guys ruled out, but 2, Gentry's not coaching. So like their starting lineups have been volatile anyway in the front court. Now he's not coaching. Who knows if Metu starts? They could go back to Terrence Davis. They could do pretty much anything. If they do go back to Terrence Davis as a starter, get Terrence Davis into your lineups at 4K.
There's nothing worse than this. They don't even play today. Dwayne Rankin, who is Suns beat writer, just reported that Devin Booker is out versus the Wizards. And I was just like, oh no. And then I was like, it's not even today. So thanks for nothing, Dwayne. Yeah, this Sacramento team, I mean, they have quite a few options. Like, if you told me that 2 guys from Sacramento were in the GPP winning lineup today, I'd believe it. And I would have no confidence in picking who those 2 were.
No.
It's like, Davion Mitchell and Metu. Great. All right.
Over 42 points for Porzingis on PrizePicks, right?
I got him at 40, but I have been a little bit low on him. So it's probably not one that I would want.
Yeah, I mean, let me double check with that scoring, but I'm pretty positive I have the over.
It's not one that I would want to take.
I'm at 43.7.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably one you shouldn't take. Anything else here for Sacramento?
Keep an eye on the starting lineup. So, I mean, basically, I guess if Len starts, he's a risky but good value. If Metu starts, he's a risky but potentially good value. If Terrence Davis does rejoin the starting lineup, play as much of him as you can. Outside of that, talking about the regular guys, Fox looks fine, Halliburton looks fine, Barnes looks fine.
All righty. Final game, Clippers at Utah. Clippers are massive dogs, 9.5 points, and we don't really know what we're doing here quite yet. Q tag on Paul George, Q tag on Batum. If they're both in, other than the fact that Paul George is projected for no ownership, I don't really have a ton of interest in anything for the Clippers. And if Paul George ends up out, I don't even know if I have a ton of interest in them anyway.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad the pricing has come up like it has, because that combined with the difficult matchup at Utah, I'm not overly concerned about waiting for this news. On FanDuel, it's a little bit different because Paul George is 8,900 with guard forward eligibility. So he looks like a good play if he's in. But on DraftKings at 10.5, I mean, I'd rather play Murray. I'd rather play Young. I'd rather play Towns. pretty much rather play anybody in that price range. So not really worried about it there. But even if he's out, you know, it makes somebody like Jackson look better. It makes Terrence Mann and Kennard look better, but those salaries have also come up. I'm just not going to be too concerned if I can't get to the Clippers and George is out.
On the Utah side, it's business as usual for the Utah Jazz. Donovan Mitchell is 13% owned on FanDuel, where he's 8,300. I think that's more than reasonable. But we know exactly what we're getting out of Utah from a rotational standpoint, from everything standpoint. This is another team where if you want to get Gobert, Mitchell, Royce O'Neal, Boyan, Mike Conley, Clarkson, I think it's all reasonable in like 5% of your lineups or 10% of your lineups if you want to be ultra aggressive. There are no priorities from Utah today.
Yep, that's how I see it. Pretty much just correctly priced guys. Mitchell, Gobert, they can both go for 50, but you're paying for it. Conley at 5,700, probably the first one I'd get to on DraftKings. But even there, I mean, there's plenty of other options in that range as well. He is only getting 2% ownership, which is pretty appealing. I think he's pretty similar to Spencer Dinwiddie in terms of projection.
That'll do it, man. Any final thoughts on this slate? Anything you want to let the people know before we get out of here?
Be ready to light swap.
There it is. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Don't go anywhere. Stay right here. I'm going to let the Live Before Lock crew hit these 2 super chats that just came in, but thank you guys for being here. Thank you to PrizePicks for being the presenting sponsor. 1 more hour to go, and I think it might be a little crazy, so you want to be ready for it. Good luck tonight, everybody. We're back again doing it tomorrow, but for right now, Live Before Lock is next.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the NBA Live Before Lock show presented by PrizePicks. I'm Eric Lindquist. We've got an 11-gamer in store. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be madness. We're going to have a half an hour to hang out afterwards and maybe tilt if there's anything crazy that really goes on that, it generally makes for good YouTube, good TV, if you will. But I've got my buddy Terry McBride over there at Digital B21 over on the Twitter sphere. We're going to be kind of just teaming up, making this all work here. A lot of NBA news, but hey, Terry, how you doing, my dude?
Pretty good, buddy. It's good to be here with you. I think. I mean, it feels good on the way in. I was a little, I said yes to filling in for whoever it was. I assume Greg tonight, and I started to regret that like during the day when this slate went totally sideways and wonky. But hey, it's going to be fun to talk through regardless. So should be a good one. We've definitely got a lot on our plate.
Yeah, I was actually a smart kid today with an 11 gamer. There's just too many pieces of news. So I have a couple on FanDuel and Yahoo just to be able to converse and talk to the people about them. But I'm primarily playing on DraftKings, keeping it to one site simply because of that, and going to be playing some PrizePicks. So I'm looking forward to that. We'll have half an hour to be able to discuss that afterwards. But 2 super chats as we came in. One was right towards Josh. So that was sad that Josh didn't get to read that one off. It was for him.
Very nice compliment that he just left on the table there. He said he was giving it to us though. So we appreciate you saying that for us. He's been with us for since 2018, obviously.
Textbook Josh, just, well, whatever. He hates the attention. That's what it is. Courtney Krupp, first, I've been rocking with you, Josh, since 18. Your process show has changed my life, bro. Oh, thank you. That's so nice. He said she said on FD 3 to 100 contest, would you approach that as a cash lineup or GPP? What would you be doing there, Terry?
Sorry, that was 3.
It's like 3 to 100. I'm assuming. I mean, as you get up to 100 people, you kind of want to maybe have your 1 or 2 plays in store. But I mean, for most of those contests, it would be more of a cash game type format. It's a small field. You could get close to an optimal, but as you go up past like 10 people, 20 people, there's some ways to be a little bit more GPP focused.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more of maybe a conservative approach, like a GPP approach, but more conservative. Like you want to build in the foundation of an optimal cashy kind of a chalky kind of lineup, because there's just not that many opportunities for a lot of differentiation from that core build of the most purely optimal plays. You'll get nights where just pure variance has those lineups that are total outliers that win. But a lot of the times, if you're using our projections, if you're using our probability metrics, you kind of want to build in that foundation. And, normally we say like 2/3 of the chalky plays and 1/3 of the non-chalky plays. On a smaller game contest like that with a smaller field, I would be comfortable, taking that a little bit further and just making like 1 or 2 differentiated plays. And I think that's enough if you're making the right decisions.
Yep, great answer. And then D-Love1123, just wanted to throw something your way. You guys and the whole Awesemo team have helped out tremendously as of recent. You guys are awesome with a lot of ease. Thank you so much. We appreciate seeing stuff like that. It feels great. Hit that like button if you agree. 2.7K people here hanging out. We're going to have a lot more, I'm sure, as we get closer here to lock. It's going to get madness, so let's get to it here. I'm refreshing everything so that we can have the most updated pieces, but what are you paying attention to the most here outside of, let's just kind of say the Joel Embiid situation. I think that's kind of a de facto number one. Doc Rivers, very trustworthy individual, never done anything crazy like late scratches or anything of the sort, not even recent or anything like that. But what are you paying attention to the most on the news front, Terry?
Yeah, I mean, the Embiid situation is obviously very clear. I know you said despite that, but him and Seth Curry being game time decisions. We know George Niang is out of that rotation. There's a couple other pieces missing in Philadelphia. So it's just concerning about where we're going. I mean, we know what the target plays are, but you get that comment about not being afraid to play Embiid and Drummond together, and God knows what that looks like if they actually go that route. I'm kind of hoping we just get the Embiid scratch here so that it just kind of becomes the more obvious approach, and you can just kind of play a core of the value guys and then Drummond if you want to go there. Some of the other things, I don't think we've seen the official confirmation on Middleton. Somebody was saying that he was out for warmups, but I'm not sure if that was actually factual. I think that's another real key one for the entire slate. We know that no Giannis over there. Drew Holiday already carrying significant value. I think would go up a little bit in value if Middleton scratches. And then some other pieces obviously are going to become really valuable over there. But Drew is very negatively leveraged already, where Middleton is currently sitting at a really low ownership projection and a positive leverage situation. I'd really like to grab some Middleton if we get like late news that he's in. So that's an opportunity I'm kind of keeping my eye on there.
Yeah, big time in the boom bust tool at the very top of the leverage category. That makes a lot of sense. I will also say Courtney Mill, 41, 6'2", 220. There's some kind of a psych experiment that exists there. I apologize for kind of flip-flopping mid-answer there, but Courtney, definitely a unisex name. So shout out to Courtney again. Thank you so much for the super chat. Again, every name should be Every name should be, unisex. There's really no difference for me whatsoever. That's a great name.
Speaking as a Terry, I can only agree. And insist that you spell my name with an I with a little heart over the top of it if you're going to write it out.
Oh, that's so fun. That's so fun. It's also fun talking some NBA. Let's get to it. We go position by position here on this show. And at the top of the guard board, of course, Drew Holiday is a massive piece. I would be shocked if he's only 38%, like legitimately super, super shocked. And I don't even think we have to sit around and wait for the Middleton news to know that. I think he'll be well above 50% in a lot of contests. He's 7,500 here. I mean, he really is the guy that we're looking at identifying here on every single site. But over on the blue site, which I think you frequent a little bit more than me, what are you kind of looking at out of Drew Holiday?
Yeah, he's an option. He's a stronger option, I think, on the DraftKings slate where we're getting him for a little bit. Maybe it's not a total discount since it's against the lower cap. At 7,500 feels a little bit lighter, and he's getting a little bit more attention, but comes up a little bit more optimal, has a stronger boom score probability for the score for the money, and which is how positioning breaks down on the site. So on the FanDuel slate, a little of that gets shaved off the top. He comes up 11.2% optimal. I just hate the negative 23 leverage. I think the opportunity's there. I just wish, maybe a little bit less of the field was on him at that price, or the price was a little bit lower with that much of the field on him. So he's definitely in play. He's a very strong option. And if Middleton doesn't go, I think he only increases in value there. But I do have other options on the board, and there are so many point guard, shooting guard values on the board on the FanDuel slate, on both slates really, that you can get away with mixing and matching and getting away from something that's crazy, crazy chalky because it doesn't have that extreme foundational value to lineup construction, at least on the FanDuel slate.
All right. Well, Evan Mobley got ruled out, and we have Dean Wade starting. So I hate when Dean Wade starts. It's just like legitimately the stone cold worst. I got to say, though, you're going to have Lauri Markkanen, who's going to get a drastic bunk for me, kind of all over the place. But Cedi Osman is kind of the guy that I was hoping to see there amongst a lot of these guys. We'll see what that exact starting lineup ends up looking like, but it's probably just a 1-for-1 swap with Dean Wade going in there alongside Allen and Lauri Markkanen, Darius Garland, Jared Allen. We know that starting rotation there. It's just brutal. So any instant reaction to that, Terry?
No, I'm with you. I would have preferred to see Cedi there, especially with his shooting guard and small forward eligibility on DK for only 4,300. A little less interesting to me at small forward, power forward for 49 on FanDuel, but he would have been a decent value. There's still the possibility that he ticks upward of 20 minutes, which I think is still going to leave him pretty short. So I wouldn't really be chasing him. The Markkanen one, I think, is pretty interesting. He was a guy I had my eye on a little bit on the FanDuel slate anyway. I'm just jumping over back to the forward slate
here's the thing. Everybody's already bringing up Kevin Love. And I mean, Dean Wade is going to obviously not play as many minutes as what you would have seen here in the event that you had Evan Mobley here. Mm-hmm. But Kevin Love was already getting attention. Now Kevin Love's going to get steamed up even further. We had him projected right around 22 minutes. 26 minutes is going to make him look a lot different. But if people are going to increase that, there's 51 minutes here before lock of that game. That is a freaky, freaky situation. And a 1.25 DraftKings points per minute player is Kevin Love. So I do think that change of minutes is going to get me more of him. But I don't know what the field's going to be doing. If they're going to be jamming him in, I mean, Dean Wade is really still not going to be in play for me. 3,700. He's a 0.58, right around 0.6 DraftKings points per minute over the course of the last year. And that's just garbage on this slate. So wanted to touch on that, but continue, Terry.
Yeah. I don't really have need for Dean Wade at that level. 0.57 FanDuel points, 8.3% assist share, 7.4% rebounding. There's just not a ton there. Just looking at the slate here, it's really, to me, it's about marketing. I'm just trying to think through Love. 5,300 on FanDuel, even if we're extending him to like 26-ish minutes, if we push that projection up to 28, 29 in the median, it probably pushes the boom to the 15% range, maybe the optimal to like 12%. But I think the ownership, like you were saying, is going to take a jump probably toward like 18 to 20% just on name recognition. 4,800 on DK. He's got a little bit more value for that price, but I think the same is going to be true about the ownership jumping up, and it's probably going to get out. It's already out ahead of the optimal rate. We were at 10.9% owned, 6.3% optimal, so -4 and change leverage. I think that situation is going to get worse. So I don't know that he necessarily gains a lot of value for picking up probably 6 to 8 minutes here.
Oh, it's such a dicey thing because I could totally see them giving Kevin Love more minutes. I mean, I would have to think Are they going to play Dean Wade? I'm looking through some of Dean Wade's starts, and I mean, he's played upwards of 40 minutes. I mean, it is kind of freaky where Dean Wade could play a massive amount of minutes here if they just decide to give Kevin Love the same role. So I said 0.6 fantasy points per minute. I hate playing Dean Wade. It's truly the stone cold worst, but maybe a tiny bit of interest. We'll see kind of where the numbers land, but I'm probably going to get to a tiny bit, I would assume here now. But if I give Kevin Love 4 more minutes, I just get him in way too many lineups. I'm just kind of finding that out as we're going. But back to the guard position here. We talked Jrue Holiday. I think Chris Middleton being out, that would be a big bump to a lot of guys. That comes out at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And I was talking a little bit on the NBA injury report with our friend Adam Scher here this afternoon. I filled in for Greg on that. And we're not just looking at Jrue Holiday being a major beneficiary. You could see Grayson Allen, who isn't the best fantasy point per minute player, right around 0.8, but could just see an increased role. Pat Connaughton as well, getting double-digit ownership. Anybody else here from the Bucks guard side that you might be interested in rostering tonight?
Yeah, it's really those two guys, probably Grayson Allen to a lesser degree, just because I don't like him on a personal level. I think it's all that tripping and cheating.
It's fair.
But not that he's done that in the NBA, because I think it's a different story these days. But Pat Connaughton interests me a little bit more despite the price. The numbers on Grayson Allen too, just being pretty negatively leveraged on the FanDuel slate, wasn't something that was really interesting to me. The price is right though. I mean, you could absolutely get production from the guy. I don't want to bias anybody's opinion just because I don't like the guy. With 30 and change minutes already, he's looking like a reasonable play in terms of his probability marks. 21% boom score, 7.8% optimal on FanDuel, almost 10% optimal on DK, almost 25% boom score for 4,000 at the guard and shooting guard and small forward. So there's definitely value there. And if those minutes go up, if the opportunity goes up without Middleton on the floor, of course it's a good opportunity. Of course it's somebody that should be considered. But I think the ownership again is going to go up alongside that. And there are just a lot of strong value plays in a similar kind of a price range that maybe aren't getting the exact same attention, or maybe rate out a little bit better with a little bit more attention. So it's kind of a mix and match game around a lot of the value plays today, which is a weird way that the slate's just kind of coming together with all these absences. Typically we've got a few kind of baked in stone value plays, and we mix and match the mid-range around it. I think today it's the other way around.
I think it is too. I'm definitely in agreement with you on that regard. Miami Mike 305 coming in with the super chat. Again, he's got Jigsaw as the avatar, and you've probably missed this bit from times past because this happened, 2 weeks ago? But
hello, Terry. I would like to say hello to you in my lovely voice. You've lived a pathetic life out there. You're a Giants fan, and that sucks. It's very awful. Donate.
A little bit of that. That's my Jigsaw.
Is there some kind of warning
Stop
coming?
it.
He's
Tyler,
got my DVDs rigged where they're going to crush my head if all this mountain of DVDs collapses on me?
Dean Wade is terrible at basketball.
Yes, he is.
A little bit of that. So thank you so much to Miami Mike. There's your $10 worth. It is what it is. Yeah. What is going on? Again, if you've seen that bit before here by now, Miami Mike drops it in and I do the thing. That's generally how it works.
Gotta be done.
Boo. Yeah. Thank you so much, Tyler Xander. Back to the guard position.
Can we get your Jigsaw talking to your Bane at some point? It doesn't have to be now, but at some point in the future. A conversation.
I think that's a very intriguing idea. That was terrible. Jalen Brunson, next guy here on the board. I'm surprised he's not more popular, but part of that is Jrue Holiday's eating up a lot of that guard position. I don't really know what needs to be said. 6,700, his number's starting to trail up here. Much more of a talking point. 6,200, he's even a little bit more popular in FanDuel. We don't really need to go on with that. Yes, he's a fantastic play. There's about, I lost the leverage here. We'll see as the boom bust tool is updating, but definitely going to make sense as a play here. Kyle Lowry, in the absence of Tyler Hero, somebody that I'm getting to an absolute boat ton. So I hope he's in a good spot. Let's talk Max Strus, because I'm surprised that he's getting as much attention as he is. 3,100 is the main reason over on DK. FanDuel, I don't know if he's even remotely a necessity, but what do you think about him and the rest of this Miami Heat situation without Butler, without Bam Adebayo, and now without Tyler Hero?
Yeah, kind of reflecting the nature of the slate that I was just talking about. When I got to the third spot in my, usually I write up 3 players in my article. I got to the third spot and I just kind of went, here's a bunch of different situations that are going on with some guys that you might not know. I used just, Jerry Seinfeld's "Who are these people?" as the heading for it, because some of these guys, somewhat anonymous to a lot of the field. Max Strus may or may not fit that category. His 1 or 2, big upside games for low cost over the course of the season. Gabe Vincent, similar story, maybe a little bit more known. I think Vincent's got the better value across both sites. $4,700 point guard on FanDuel comes up 14% optimal. Nice little positive leverage score on him. So I'm actually looking at him as a target play. I like Lowry a ton, and I'm getting to him, but so is the rest of the field. I think Vincent gives you a little bit of differentiation. Like you said, at 4,000, I don't think Strus gets there for us very much on FanDuel. I was thinking that he might come up a little bit more than he did in terms of our optimal rate, still below 5. Nobody's going to be on him. So if you want to throw a dart at a guy who can make some shots and potentially put up a weird little score, that's not a terrible play. I mean, we're expecting him for 27 and a half minutes at 4,000. That's not terrible. I like it a lot more, though, for 3,100 shooting guard and small forward eligible. So you can mix and match him to 5 spots in your lineup. 12.8% optimal over on DK. He's negatively leveraged 19% of the field on him. But at that price, I mean, he only has to make a couple of buckets to make median value. And then everything else after that is gravy. So I think that's one that if you're building in that direction, you need the value. You can definitely take advantage of that. That said, there are other guys at the same price. Josh Christopher over on Houston, same exact price, slots into the shooting guard position. You get a little bit more optimal with him. You get a little bit less aggregate ownership. So it's a juggling act with these value plays. It really, really is.
Oh my gosh. $50 super chat now from Miami Mike. Hey, I can't back it up with Jigsaw. I got annihilated on that, but people were asking for Dr. Evil. The details of my life are quite inconsequential. Very well, where do I begin? My father was a relentlessly self-improving boulangerie owner from Belgium with low-grade narcolepsy and a penchant for buggery. Okay, yeah, there's that. It's
solid.
Nice. Thank you. That's all I got for you.
I mentioned in YouTube chat yesterday at the end of the show, I don't know if you caught it, I had left the room 2 days ago, and that HBO show, How To with John Wilson, came on. And the dude's just got, it's a funny show. Dude's just got this Midwestern accent, and it sounds a lot like you. I was in my kitchen, and I actually came back into my office. I was like, oh, what show is Eric on now? That's weird. I swear I thought it was you.
I don't know how I feel about that. You're going to have to drop a YouTube link and let me know. Not really good. Ooh.
Funny show.
Throw me a bone here. Okay, boss, need the info. We're going to continue on, shall we? Yeah. Is that okay with you if we talk some DFS? That fine?
That works. No? That works. I'm not going to throw an Austin Powers.
Anyone? No? Okay. Grayson Allen, another guy that I'm getting to quite a bit here. Malcolm Brogdon, really not even on my board here, but you do want to try to force in a little bit of Indiana if we're going to be getting to a lot of Milwaukee. I understand why that's kind of happening here. Pat Connaughton makes some sense. Even at 5K, he's going to have to play a boatload of minutes where you just have to be waiting on that Middleton news. So just kind of be on the ready there. There's a lot of places that this could really go. But for me, it's an 11 gamer. There's late swap. And we have a big piece in Paul George just kind of sitting in that evening window. And I know a lot of these guys are priced up over on DraftKings, but I think over on FanDuel, it's something that really intrigues me to be playing the late swap game because you have Reggie Jackson sub 6K, Marcus Morris sub 6K, Terrence Mann, 5,700, 5,500. It's kind of iffy there, but there might be something to mine out in that event here and gives you access to a late swap game in the late night hammer. You never know what kind of news could break with Sacramento. And so for me, I'm almost like forcing to get some of that situation simply because I want to see what Sacramento's starting lineup looks like. And I think if I spend a little bit more and force like a clipper or two into my lineups, I have more salary, more swap ability to get onto Sacramento pieces because that's going to be a priority for me to try to utilize and find some under-owned pieces from that late night hammer. Have you looked at anything on FanDuel as far as what you're planning to do with late swap?
Little bit. Some of it was around that Clippers situation. I don't love the matchup there. So if we're losing George and we're targeting some of those value guys, I don't love that it's happening against Utah. That's the only real ding that I would throw it. But I do think, guys like Jackson, like you mentioned, guys like
Chris Middleton ruled out. I love you so much. I love you, but I have to bring it up right away before chat goes nuts here. Jordan Lockhart also Miami tomorrow for the live final. Best of luck, dude. You're just crushing the world. $20 super chat. Hopefully bringing home a victory for the Awesemo team. If it ain't me, hopefully it's the boss man. I think that that's a fair assessment. Or I'm happy to have it be the Colts too. Steve Buzzard, I know, is going to be out there living the life in Miami. So any of those three, that's who I'm cheering for. So Team Awesemo, best of luck. Everybody down there in Miami, going to be a blast. I'm very, very jealous.
Subscription if you streak the event with the Awesemo logo painted on your chest.
Oh, okay.
Just throwing it out there.
Terry McBride offering up the people things. How about no, Scott? Going to Chris Middleton news. So no Chris Middleton. I think that was kind of where we were leaning. If I had to pick, that was going to kind of be the situation. And I was already building with some Pat Connaughton in my life with Grayson Allen. I mean, you can't possibly get to enough of these guys. We have plenty of time to be able to make way for that, regardless of how the starting lineup looks like. I got to say, the main thing that I'm waiting to see is Rodney Hood. If Rodney Hood can end up in the starting lineup, he's played 23 and 25 minutes of late. I could see even a bigger spike to those minutes. I mean, you're so secure with that starting five, and everybody is going to be getting attention out of Grayson Allen, Drew Holiday, Pat Connaughton, and Bobby Portis, and I rightfully so, big time. But I gotta say that third or that what would it be? The fifth piece that you're looking at there, Rodney Hood at 3,300 over on DK would become an interesting piece. Do you have any idea kind of who that fifth starter would be that you might prioritize?
I mean, that's as good a name as any. I'm just going to kind of wait on the news rather than take a stab at it. We've got an interesting mix of values here. So, I mean, whichever one you see becomes immediately more interesting, just because all these guys are priced below 4,000 on the FanDuel slate, below 4,000 on the DK slate. So that guy, just by virtue of doubling his minutes projection, is going to have some value. Hood would be interesting. Over the last 3 games, he's averaged 20 minutes a game. 2 of those were, like you said, I think 23 and 25 minutes, 0.62 FanDuel points per minute across those. Not like crazy interesting. Across the rest of these guys that we're looking at, Connaughton at 0.81 fantasy points per minute for the season, George Hill 0.65, Thanasis 0.78, Nwora 0.74.
Yeah. I mean, Nwora would be the most fascinating from a fantasy point per minute rate, but for me, Rodney Hood just is starting to play minutes already. I think he would be the guy that would ramp up to 35 minutes. So his rate is terrible, but I mean, he's somebody who I think could play a ton of minutes in this spot.
It depends what they want to do with this game. Like, do they want to go to a veteran who's going to maybe help them compete, or do they want to go to a kid who maybe they want to just throw some minutes to in a game that maybe they're just saying, hey, we're going to win most of our games this year. We're not going to win this one.
Yeah, I mean, they're only 2-point dogs right now. If you felt that way, you should just be slamming the Indiana side -2. Sure. And again, I think that would be an awesome number to get right now with no Giannis, with no Chris Middleton. You're looking at Drew Holiday and and Bobby Portis, who's just unbelievable here and probably becomes one of my favorite center plays. Was already one of my favorite center plays, but at 1.17 fantasy points per minute on DK over the last year, bang. Caleb's super chat. What is Caleb's super chat? What did I miss for Caleb's? There we go. Alan Markkanen or Garland Hart on Yahoo. The lineup is already somewhat chalky, if that matters. Thanks. Garland Hart is going to be very, very different, but I want the Alan Markkanen. Just give me both of those Cleveland situations. How about you, Terry?
I don't have any problem taking that. I think there's more just pure kind of reliable point production in that combination. So that makes some sense to me. I was just looking at this year rates on the point per minutes with Giannis, Middleton, and whoever the hell else is missing from this team.
Yeah.
I've got some facsimile of it. Portis is a good call. 1.02 FanDuel points per minute over the course of this season in 159 minutes without those 3. Drew at 1.24 is obviously a great go-to. Connaughton gets you 0.95, Grayson 0.94, Jordan Nwora 0.80. All those guys upwards of 100 minutes, and then you get into like George Hill's out there with 127 at 0.67, Thanasis 117 at 0.75. Beyond that, Rodney Hood down at the 106 minutes, 0.47. That's a little dicey if we're going with that number, but I think maybe we can rely on a little bit more production than what we've seen there in this scenario. So just to put some numbers behind it, like I said, I'm just kind of waiting to see which one starts, and that's where I would throw my lot.
All right, Plan B Smoothies. I joined today, boys. Welcome. It's great to have you. I think that's something that we'll be talking about here in a second as we kind of finish out the guard position. Looks good. It looks like we're caught up on everything. Oh, Miami Mike again. Another $10, because why not? Please visit Tootsie's if you're ever in Miami. I don't know what that is. I can make assumptions. I probably, have fun.
It's either a candy store or a strip club.
Yep, whatever floats your boat. Both sound delicious. That was weird. But here we go. The rest of the guard position. Let's finish this out here. We just had that big piece of news drop. We'll have plenty of time to react to it. So I'm not too kind of concerned with it. Trey Mann, somebody else that was just kind of really, really high up there that I'm really not getting to now. 3,200. I guess he's dropped to around 5%. So a little bit more doable. Anybody else at the guard position that you find to be somebody that, I mean, it's an 11 gamer. We could go on and on forever, but is there somebody that you're really getting to in a meaningful way that isn't popping in the projections?
Man was at least worth a mention at 3,200 on the DK slate, 37 on the FanDuel slate. I was a little bit less interested, but there was like just essentially 1% ownership on him. So I was taking a few discount shares there. I like him a little bit better on DK. He comes up with a 30% boom score probability in the previous update. I assume it'll be somewhere around that number because that's not really going to change. That's just his projection and his salary that'll get us that number. Multi-position guard eligible, totally fine, but there's just a lot of other options. We were talking a little bit about the Miami guys. We were talking about that Sacramento team that's got Terrence Davis, if he's back in the starting lineup for $4,000, small shooting guard and small forward eligible. Definitely big time value there. Probably going to go off underappreciated on this slate. I mentioned Josh Christopher early for only 3,100 on the DK slate. Another guy coming up very optimal. Some people are getting to him, but it's only mid-teens ownership. So that's something that you can easily offset by going to leverage plays at other positions if you want to grab the value there instead of going to a more highly owned guy like Max Strus. So there's just different combinations all over. I really encourage everybody to use the boom bust tool today because it lays all this out for you in a pretty good fashion where you can sort by salaries and you can kind of see how the guys relate to one another. So I would say to do it that way, pull up the guys who are eligible at the guard spots, compare their rates, compare their salaries across the entire position, and make some of the decisions about how you're combining these guys in lineups.
I don't know how we go on. Taco Fall is out. I don't know how the show continues, but it will continue here. I was kidding. It's Taco Fall. He was going to play like a minute maybe. But hey, you know what you guys can do if you want to be able to see all the lovely projections that are getting updated in real time. And today is one of the busier ones that we will ever have here at Awesemo.com. But if you want to check all of it out right now, it's $29.95 for the weekly pass. And that's every sport, not just NBA, it's NFL, it's NHL. Jake Hari and the team just absolutely crushing behind the scenes there. We've got MMA Top Fighters tool. Everybody else, Pete the Heat, who, filled in on the Slate Starter pod along with me on Sunday, Monday, talked some hoops with him. It was an absolute blast, but check out all his MMA content as well. All of this is yours for $29.95, and you can get 25% off right now with the promo code NBA Live, all caps, one word, NBA Live, $16.95 for the weekly package without a lot of the other fixings. And again, that's why you want to use this for that weekly pass anyway, and $4.95 for the weekly express package, which just is for NBA Showdown and single game contests. That's not a bad way to start, but I'm telling you, the 25% off for NBA Live, check that out. Promise you won't be disappointed. Stop guessing, start winning. Join us here at Awesemo Plus today, like Plan B smoothies. Welcome, by the way. There we go. Let's go to the forward position here because we've got a lot to discuss here. We got Chris Middleton off the board here, and I'm kind of finishing all of my updates here for that side. I know people were talking about Thanasis here. Şengün isn't a priority now. Şengün is definitely a priority on this slate for me. 4,500. I understand there is a massive amount of negative leverage here. But if there's anything that I took from talking with Ryan Rinpack, who, I don't know, he wins every tournament and was just obsessed with this play last night on the slate starter and was going on and on about if Christian Wood is out, this is the absolute smash of all smashes, regardless of if he's starting or not. How do you feel about Şengün being the most popular player on this slate other than Drew Holiday?
Yeah, I'm good with it. I'm good with riding the popularity. I think he's a building block kind of a piece on this slate, even with some of the changes that have come through. I'm just resorting to make sure I'm still telling the truth, and it looks like I am. 20% optimal on the DK slate, around 20% on the FanDuel slate. And I think with the center and power forward eligibility on both sites, you can kind of mix and match them around the board into different lineup combinations where you're getting him alongside Jokic on both sites. You don't have to worry about sacrificing center upside to go to him. So I like that play. I think it's a valuable play. I wish it was at, 30% ownership, 25% ownership, something like that. Sure, of course. But I think we can ride with the public on that one and just kind of build in the value. He's projected for upwards of 30 points on the FanDuel slate, right around 30 on the DK slate, 4,500 and 5,400 across the two sites. I reversed those as 45 on DK. He's a strong value. He's definitely there. I wouldn't, like, if I'm building 150 lineups, am I 40, 60, or 25% on him? I might at this point, now that other things are opening up, I might end up on the 25 side of that, where I would have been on the 60 side of that earlier in the day, if that makes sense.
What do you mean Tate 70 burger incoming since I jinxed it? I like Tate. Joel Embiid is available to play. We'll get to that at the center position. I will see it. I just want to see a starting lineup here regardless. I think that that's going to be an important thing. Seth Curry as well is available to play. I think that just kind of muddies up the situation a little bit, less to extract, but so long as we're good to see him on the floor, that's great. My God, I've never seen so many PJ Tucker questions in my entire life. We'll get there as well. But Juma Okeke there for Orlando, 25%. He's kind of the exact same situation as Max Strus to me, where are they going to be appealing on a fantasy point per minute basis? Absolutely not. But I don't really want to be getting there. And, we just got Vincent in the starting lineup instead of Max Strus. I think that definitely gives me the leg up here on Gabe Vincent over him. Obviously, he's much more expensive and Strus is still going to be on the floor, but whatever. Okeke, KJ Martin, Max Strus, where he has, small forward eligibility on DK. Talk through some of these really cheap forwards over on the DK slate that are getting tons of attention.
Yeah, Juma Okeke's guy who wasn't really in my head to be looking at on this slate until that Orlando news changed with Bama coming out, and then he got a little bit of a minutes bump and kind of exploded up the board on DK specifically. On FanDuel, he's 3,900, power forward only. It kind of puts him into the wash with a lot of other options. He doesn't really stand out. The boom score is good. The median projection's fine. 15% ownership is outpacing his optimal rate. On the DK slate, he's more interesting. He comes up 15% optimal. He's owned at a 25% clip. So he's negatively leveraged, but for 3,200 eligibility across both forward positions, I do think there's something to chew on there. 0.74 fantasy points per minute for the course of the season in 20.7 minutes per game. Over the last 3, he's only seen 17.7 minutes and 0.55 fantasy points per minute, but there's more for him to do today. 28.9 minute projection from Alex. If he returns back toward that 0.75 kind of a guy and hopefully gives you a little bit more, the true shooting percentage for him, for example, is only 44.1%. If he makes a couple additional buckets today, in addition to the other things that he does on the floor, I think he cruises through that $3,200 value. So I think that's a strong play there. Looking around to some of the other guys at the super cheap level, up at the top of the board, we've got Şengün, who we talked about. We can look at, let's see, I've got a lot of guys in kind of in the middle. KJ Martin is the other one that you mentioned. I was looking to see if there was another one here. $3,600 KJ Martin does stand out as a good play on the DK slate. Another guy, maybe a little bit less interesting on FanDuel. I like the multi-position with small forward, power forward on FanDuel. He's power forward center on DK, which I think is a little bit less interesting given some of the guys that we want to play in the center spot. But he's got a lot of value. 25% ownership, 13% optimal. Got him projected at 24. I think there's room for him to go above that. So does the boom score probability, which is pushing 35%. I was getting him somewhat on the FanDuel slate. Like I said, small forward eligibility was putting him into the mix where I was getting him and Şengün side by side. That was in earlier builds, though. Now he's looking a little bit negatively leveraged for the overall upside. 20% boom score probability, a little less interesting than the 34 across down. So maybe it shaves that one down for me a little bit on the FanDuel slate, but I'm still interested on DK.
Chat is a special place today. I'm not going to even lie to you. I'm enjoying it. Everybody's having fun here. We're all having fun. Yeah, keep it on moving here. PJ Tucker, yeah, he's not garnering any attention, but yet I see his name popping up everywhere. I'm not playing him at 5,300. Everybody else can enjoy trying to make that a thing. Maybe he has a different role on this team. Maybe so, but he's got 240 spots now in the last 2. Yeah, I would take that at 5,300, but I don't think that we're going to be basically saying this is the way he's going to be performing going forward. I don't believe in hot streaks. I am not going to be going to PJ Tucker. Everybody else can chase that. I bet he's more than 1% rostered. I will throw that out there. I've seen enough questions about him to know you kind of get that feel that, he's going to be a little bit more than 1%, but he's not getting anywhere close to the board for me. But anybody else that you wanted to talk about from Miami to kind of close the loop on that?
Yeah, I think we're actually very under on where Tucker's going to land. In my last update, he's 0.1 on FanDuel and 0.6 on DK. I'm going to expect him like 6 to 8% ownership, to be quite honest. I think he's going to be in a lot more lineups than we're expecting here, just by virtue of the hot streak that you just talked about. 1.14 fantasy points per minute over the last 3 games, 34 minutes a night, has people thinking that, gee, this is suddenly a guy at 36 years old who figured out how to be an amazing fantasy player. He's just happened to make a bunch of threes. That's where it's coming from. The rebounding and the assists that he does normally are fine, but we're talking about a guy who largely sits in the corner, and whether or not his threes go in make the difference between whether or not he puts up a little bit of a fantasy score. And he's just gotten a few more of them. So 28.1 minutes per game for the season, 0.71 fantasy points per minute for the season. That's much more the player that PJ Tucker is, even with the absences in this Heat rotation. I just don't see it. I'm not a believer. I'm with you. So not not something that interests me with at the price, even with not much ownership projected on him. Just not a player I'm going to.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at a lot of Cleveland splits because now I want to kind of transfer this to the Houston side and how they're affected by having Mobley off the floor. We've talked about his block potential, and that doesn't always necessarily translate to real life, but it definitely translates to real life for Cleveland. The infusion of Evan Mobley's made them a lot better basketball team. 108 offensive rating per 100 possessions with him on the floor, but a 102 defensive rating is really what's fascinating, looking at how much better this team is with him on a floor. I think having the absence of him in the middle and having it be Dean Wade, I mean, you're definitely looking at an opportunity for the likes of KJ Martin, looking for the likes of Jayshawn Tate, these other guys to really kind of find some kind of an upside here on this slate. Josh Christopher is somebody at 3,100. I'm more inclined to take a couple shots here on him. 3,100 shooting guard only, not the multi-positional eligibility. So he might be a little bit lower owned as a result. You basically play him in shooting guard or you're not playing him very often. There's only 3 total spots he can appear as opposed to 4 that you have if you can be point guard, shooting guard eligible. But Jayshawn Tate, somebody that's moved up a little bit for me here at 5,800. I was probably getting to none. Now I'm a little bit over that 10% number. KG Martin, Şengün, we've talked about ad nauseum, where I just don't know how to get away from that. We're projecting it for nearly 30 at 4,500. And I think there's upside for even more than the 27 minutes we're projecting him for, which is just ridiculous to say out loud for a guy who's been playing high. Oh, look at this. I changed it to Houston talk and we get the starting lineup. Look at this.
Oh, look at that.
DJ Augustine, Armani Brooks, Garrison Matthews, Jayshawn Tate, and Daniel Tice. It's the disgusting, horrible lineup that I kind of assumed that it would be there, but I still like Şengün. Maybe people start fading away a little bit there. Am I excited? I would love to see him start eventually, but that's not going to be the case. I didn't expect it to be the case. How does that starting lineup affect what you're going to be doing with Houston?
Yeah, no major impact. The guys on the last show were talking about it. Adam was talking about it a little bit in terms of, even with Tice starting, it's probably going to come out with Şengün getting more of the minutes, getting the closing minutes and being out there. There was also the possibility of them playing out there at the same time in a short rotation. So there's just minutes available. I don't think it really takes him down any. I don't think it makes me interested in Daniel Tice. I would be a little bit interested in Jayshawn Tate. I'm just pulling the most recent update so I can get some of the ownership. Last update I had, Tate was still owned under 10% on both sites, which kind of interests me. There's I think enough production. It's not run wild production, but I think there's enough there that with just in a raw ownership kind of a way, that's one that I'm happy to put into some lineups here. And I just have to grab the list of players again.
Yeah,
so that
for me, the main thing that keeps me from wanting to be obsessed with Şengün now that he's not starting is that we don't know how this entire Sacramento starting lineup is going to look like. We have a long time to be waiting and to be sitting on lineups. And Şengün is, I think, markedly a good play. Everybody around the industry has been talking about him. He's at the top of every single projection site. He's gotten steamed up to a point where we know the ownership's going to be there in a drastic way. He's going to project out really well based on a 1.2 fantasy point per minute rate. If you have him projected for more than 24 minutes period, he's going to pop. But Chimezie Metu is somebody that I think really becomes a piece at 3,800 that I want to be getting to. And that would be an interesting spot for me to kind of figure out what that would look like with him in a starting unit. Maybe Terrence Davis jumps up there as well. He's at 4K. I mean, it's really an opportunity cost of giving up what this Sacramento starting lineup could look like. Yeah, it's a big step where you could get burned by that, but you could also be getting a very, very low owned piece in either one of them in a starting unit. There would be, for me, just an absolute smash on this play. It's not close to like what we've had for JaVale McGee, where we've been waiting on that news on a couple of these slates, but I still really, really like getting to pieces from Sacramento. So if anything, that's my one case saying, hey, maybe Şengün, I'm not going to get to like 90% of my lineups now.
Yeah, and I think that's fine. The one thing I would say to that is, you might get that scenario where he's been talked up all day, and then all of a sudden at 6:40, that information comes out that he's not in the starting lineup, and people who aren't actively watching shows or getting, decent advice all of a sudden panic and strip him out because there are a lot of kind of go-to-ish kind of value plays. So maybe his ownership comes down a tick just for not starting, even though we don't necessarily think that it should. So that would be the one, the pushback that I would give on maybe stripping away shares is that maybe you get that advantage. But I do think, if you're going to that Metu play for 3,800 at the power forward on DK and you get him in the starting lineup, there's fantastic value there. 0.93 fantasy points per minute for the season. Over the last 3, just seeing 19 minutes a game, 0.6 fantasy points per minute. So a little bit of a downturn, but I don't think we necessarily worry about that. We've got him projected at 22 minutes right now, and he's drawing 3% optimal and no ownership. If we get him confirmed for starters minutes, then I think there's definitely a little bit of an uptick, and I doubt people are pivoting to that. So I think that's a strong tournament play at the very least. I mentioned Terrence Davis before. He was producing like a madman earlier, 0.95 fantasy points per minute for the season. He's at 1.2 for his last 3 games, averaging just 19 minutes a game. At 4,000, small forward and shooting guard eligible on DK. Very interested there. 5,100, a little bit less interested on the FanDuel slate, but I think he'd still be in play at least if his minutes go up. So definitely some value in that Sacramento one, and one worth watching for sure.
I'm seeing some talk about Terrence Ross as a play over here from the Orlando side. He's performed really, really well the last 3 games. He continues to be 4,100 here. He shot the ball markedly better, 6 for 13. Well, not really, 4 for 11, 4 for 11 the last 2, putting up some counting stats, actually getting some rebounds here and there. I don't trust the minutes. I don't really know what to make of the minutes. We've got him in for 31 right now, and he's still got to shoot the lights off of it. We have him projected under 20 raw points. I think considering he's around 7%, 8%, I mean, he's the kind of guy where, if he goes out and is knocking it down, he'll stay out on the floor and get some extended run, but I just don't trust it. What do you think about Terrence Ross here in this early window of games?
Sorry. Every time you say his name, I've had to turn and spit on the floor like an old Italian lady. I do not like Terrence Ross.
Yeah, me either.
It's a player that it's another one. It's not on a personal level. It's just because he's burnt me so many damn times just by going out there and having that clunker 18-point performance like what we've got him projected at. His nickname should be median because he's always around his median projection for me. When you don't play him, sure, he goes off and has a nice 30 and change point night, makes a bunch of shots. But like you were saying, he needs that shot to go down. That'll keep him on the floor. That'll keep him valuable and valuable. I don't see it. At 25.5 minutes, we've got him at essentially no value whatsoever here and significantly over-owned on the DK slate. If that ticked up to 32 minutes, would he gain ground on a 1.5% optimal rate up to 7% where he'd level off with his field ownership? Maybe. But if he ticked up in minutes to 32, the field would follow that and he'd still be negatively leveraged. I don't like it.
I cannot humanly possibly believe how many Milwaukee Bucks are at the top of I totally can. There's no Chris Middleton. There's no Giannis, but I mean, it is such a drastically larger number than I expected to get of Grayson Allen and Pat Connaughton. I can't even tell you. It is going to be one wild slate here for me. What are you doing
individual lineups wise on DK for how many of them you'll allow into a lineup? You just
I capped it at 4. I don't think I'm going to ever really get what's so fascinating about this team is like there's got to be minutes that you've got to go elsewhere, but everybody's going to be projecting like a really low fantasy point per minute projection. So as I'm talking through this, and again, this is one of the more important parts on the slate. So I'm happy to kind of go through this with everybody. Javonte Smart. I've been trying to fight with what those minutes are going to look like. Right now we have Rodney Hood at 23, Javonte Smart for 14.5, Thanasis for 22, Jordan Nwora there at 9 minutes, I think for Awesemo's projections. I could very well just see everybody kind of flood towards whatever that starting lineup is going to look like. But I'm really hoping it comes out late as possible so that we're able to react. And considering they're all right around that 3,300 or cheaper number, even George Hill, somebody that we have for 24 minutes. I mean, if I could pick the one guy I wanted to have start, it would be Jordan Nwora, because I think he's the best fantasy asset. He's at the flat 3K number. He's at a power forward position, which, isn't going to screw with any Jokic or any Bobby Portis, which we'll get to later here as well. But just going through this, I really think that whoever that main starter is going to get a lot of attention, but you don't want to completely write off some of these guys. So it's going to be very condensed. Most lineups are going to be to Drew Holiday, Grayson Allen, Pat Connaughton, and Bobby Portis. I probably don't want to get all 4 in lineups. So I'm going to make a group where I'm only getting to 3 of those 4, just so that I'm not jamming in every piece of that grouping. I find it tough that all 4 would extend their ceilings here. 3 is very, very likely. So, I mean, I'm going to have a minimum $2. Even if I didn't set that group, I bet that's something that I would get at least $2, maybe $3 in just about every lineup. But now it's just something where I'm trying to formulaically figure out what to do with that 5th starter, what I want to do with the rest of this rotation, because you could see a massive spike to somebody, and I just kind of want to be prepared for it. So anything you want to add to that?
Just layering in some complication into that, are you doing anything with the Pacers on the other side, whether you're limiting them, forcing them?
Well, that's a great segue. Look
at
at that, because Douglas Bowman said, how do we feel about Turner today in GPPs? And I'm assuming he's talking Miles Turner. I can't think of another Turner that would exist there. I am trying to make sure that, because if you get to $3 or $4, you want that game to stay intact. The problem is that, Brogdon's 7,700. I think he really sticks out as the guy that I would be getting to a little bit more. Miles Turner at a center position, yeah, he's 6,200, but Sabonis has started to come on here a little bit of late. I think he's carrying a little bit more of that upside that we're used to seeing there. At 9,500. You can still get to a little bit of that. It's more of a positional thing for me. I'm having so much of my center position eaten up by Jokic, eaten up by, I guess Şengün's power forward center, but Jokic and Bobby Portis, that it is really hard for me to find room to get to some Miles Turner. Do you feel the same way?
I actually really like Turner here. I love the idea of getting to him at 10% ownership on FanDuel. I love the idea of getting to him, even with the opportunity cost at center. You can still offset to the util spot, and I think we've got enough to go Turner and Jokic or somebody like that, even at 6,200. I just love the sub 10% ownership for a guy who can come out and give me 1.18, 1.15 fantasy points per minute, something like that, 1.08 rather, to 1.15 fantasy points per minute, not having to do all that much differently than what he normally does. I think it's more interesting on FanDuel, where he's also got power forward eligibility. Don't get me wrong. That's a big key here, because then you can put him alongside several other guys that are power forward center. You can put him alongside the center only guys. So much more value there. But I do really like the Turner play on both sites. And then Brogdon, I totally agree with what you said. And I think LeVert is definitely interesting too. I wish he was a little bit less owned on FanDuel. He's only 6,000 shooting guard and small forward eligible over there. So he's drawing a lot of attention, but it's basically efficient ownership for a guy with a 31% boom score probability, 20% optimal rate. So I'm happy to get to some LeVert shares here for pretty cheap on the FanDuel slate at least. And actually on DK, he's more expensive, but point guard and shooting guard eligible and positively leveraged over there. So I like getting LeVert as well on both sides.
Is this serious? People are asking. I literally went on a huge thing about Metu. I talked about how much I liked him if he is going to start. We've talked about that. I feel like some people aren't even watching the show today, or they came in late and now they're asking for stuff that's 13 minutes later here. We're going to be around for another half hour afterwards. Go ahead and fire up the questions. But if it's something we discuss, I can't rehash every single situation because there's so many on this slate. And I want to just be as helpful as possible. You know what? Super chats help that. $5 from Kyle Fergus. Much appreciated. Who's your favorite under 4,500 value play on FanDuel GPP? We got the blue site guy over there. Terry McBride, who's your favorite 4,500 and under guy?
4,500 and under. Let me sort the board here real quick, back over to FanDuel and see if we can include everybody. That question.
I can tell you my favorite here now. Chalky guy would be Grayson Allen at 4K.
Yeah, I hate that guy. Like I said, when we were talking about him, but man, does he pop now at 4K? That's a really good answer. The negative leverage for tournaments, can you get away from it? That's the question. 4,000s. Gabe Vincent at 4,700. What do we say? 45 and below? Can I cheat and take Vincent at 47? Can you buy me 200 at another position? Question asker. That would be my preferred move, because you're getting a guy under 10% ownership in the starting lineup, positively leveraged, coming up around 10% optimal, 25% boom score probability versus a 35. You're sacrificing a little bit in the boom score, but they're similarly projected in the median, and I like getting to less ownership. So that would be the way I can play it if I can steal that extra $200.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to be waiting on that Sacramento news. What is Terrence Davis's 5,100? So he's much more expensive over on the FanDuel slate. I'm looking at him more as a DK guy that I'd want to get to. Chimezie Metu, as much as people might want to think he sucks, he is a 0.93 DraftKings points per minute guy. So, or 0.93 on FanDuel. Sorry. We're talking FanDuel here at the moment. 4,100, same number as Alex Len. So, if you had to, you're not completely in a bind there. If you play Metu, you can get to Len. And that leads us into John Good, KJ Martin. So $5 super chat, KJ Martin, or hold out for a possible Metu later, DKGPP. Now you're talking. I love the late swap idea of getting to Sacramento, just because I think any value that happens later that isn't known before a slate starts comes in undervalued. It happens every single time, happens every single big slate. Yes, it's much riskier to give up value that we know exists. We have lock in 11 minutes, but Terrence Davis, 4K, Chimezie Metu, 3,800. should be pretty easy to find paths to get onto them if you give yourself a bump to either Clippers or Sacramento guys. Even Washington was a team that I know Adam at the tail end of the last show talked about he really liked, even with Kuzma there. It's a great game environment, 226.5 total. I'm boosting each one of them just to get a little bit more. How about you, Terry?
I think it makes sense to take a look at that game and just to leave yourself room to plan, because we do have several different games in the way in between that Houston game locks up. So don't put KJ Martin in your lineup thinking, all right, I've got 200 left on the board. I can pivot to Metu later. You're not going to be able to do that, but we do have 3, 4, 5, it's like 6, 7 games that start after the first 3 come off the board. So there's plenty of time to make some changes, make some late swaps. I've got a couple lineups that are just sitting off to the side right now that I'm going to work on after the show, maybe while we're talking in the half-hour show here. But there's a lot that could emerge and a lot that could change on this slate. So leaving yourself some room to make swaps around that Sacramento lineup and around some other situations, I think definitely makes a lot of sense here.
All right. And now the unstoppable Milo Nowhere, $5. Turner or Jackson on FanDuel. Which one do you prefer?
That was Turner or Triple J?
Triple J.
I would probably go Turner by virtue of a much, much better leverage score, much lower overall ownership, and a higher optimal lineup rate, and a higher boom score probability, honestly. That's Turner across the board.
I love Jared
$100 more
Jackson
same
Jr.
positioning. So do
I love them both.
Yeah.
I think if all things were equal, I would be going to Jaren Jackson. But I mean, you're seeing if you can get that $100 and make it work, obviously you can because you're asking us one or the other. Everything Terry just said is super applicable. A little bit better projection, better leverage. I think Turner's probably the right answer, although I love both. It's very close for me. We know the risks that you run into with the popular JJJ. We also know that PrizePicks is one of the best places that you can go play. And we have a half hour that we're going to be devoting to PrizePicks afterwards here. Don't know about PrizePicks? Check them out right now, prizepicks.com, or go download the app in the App Store, Google Play Store. Check it out because the props over there they have the most ridiculous library of props. We're talking disc golf. We're talking cricket. We're talking, NBA, MLB, NHL, golf, anything you could imagine. They have props over there. And you can get promo code Awesemo right now for $100 first match deposit bonus. You're not doing anything with optimizers. You're not doing anything like crazy in terms of like trying to figure out what it is that you need to do, for trying to figure out projections and such. We have the projections for you to help you have the tools to go to PrizePicks and win. It's called oddshopper.com. So head over there, check out some of the props that are at the top of the board. You're seeing Awesemo, Alex Baker's projections himself, guys behind the scenes, Steve Buzzard, Eddie Lai, everybody helping you to make money. And we have another bonus. Get 1 free month of Awesemo Platinum when you have the deposit match up to $100 when you sign up and make your first deposit. So you're getting projections behind the scenes for free for a full month in every sport, along with that deposit match over on PrizePicks. It doesn't get any better or any easier than that. Super clean site, super easy to navigate. It's an absolute blast. And we're going to be covering it for half an hour as well as talking ownership, talking about any news that drops, any starting lineup. So with 7 minutes left to lock, we're going to jump back over to DFS here, but very excited to be talking some PrizePicks with you all. Looking forward to that. And thank you so much to them for their sponsorship here of the Live Before Lock show, the Deeper Dive. They're just so fun to work with. It's the easiest site to basically back because there's so many great ways to be able to go over there and play. And I believe they're giving a perk for any prop that uses Porzingis. If he gets any kind of a block here tonight, you get a 25% boost to your payout. That's kind of nifty. Maybe we'll take a look at that here further. But jumping back over to some DFS, let's talk center, and then we can take a couple questions here to round it out. We talked about Şengün, Nikola Jokic. Ho, baby. 1.83 fantasy points per minute over on the old FanDuel slate. Is that good?
God, he's so good. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's unfair. Over the last 33 and change minutes a game, a minute above his average, a half minute, above his average. He's jumped from 1.73 fantasy points per minute to 2.03 fantasy points per minute over the course of the last 3 games. It's just bonkers. 72.3 and 31 the last time out. Nothing not to like about Nikola Jokic. I don't care what the price and the ownership are. I want this guy in my lineup pretty much every day.
That's kind of the way that I feel about it. We got 2 super chats. Sunflower, thoughts on marketing for a DK GPP? Yay, like it.
Yeah, I like marketing. Definitely 5,100 on DK. Nice price, small forward, power forward eligible. You can move them around the board to different positions. I like them even better on FanDuel, 5,000.
All right, and Zachary Williamson, $2.79 loonies, or 79 loonies. I don't know how to say that, but Christopher versus Strauss, DK single entry cash. I think you probably just go with the Strauss situation, even though I don't necessarily like him for tournaments.
I was laughing at the image of a guy giving us $2 and then 79 loonies, but yeah, I'll just agree with you because I didn't hear the question.
Yeah, don't mind me. I'm ridiculous. Keep on moving here.
Hey, going back to that, the center spot, just back to that question that came up a minute ago about Triple J, Turner, just looking at some of the other options, right? If you don't go to Jokic as the center only play, you can start putting together various combinations of Şengün for 54, Miles Turner at 65, Triple J at 64, and Bobby Portis at 77. And just rotate through those four players. They're the four next highest guys at the power forward and center position. So you can play 3 out of those 4 guys together and just do it in a rotation in any lineup that you're not going to Jokic at the center spot. And then you can rotate those guys at power forward and do a 2-man rotation through all 4 in lineups that you do go to Jokic. I just think there's so much value in that core of guys that it makes it easy to build out the forward spots in the mid-range on the FanDuel slate today. And a lot of it carries over to DK as well. I would just happen to be looking at it on FanDuel, but you lose the power forward eligibility on Portis over there, and you lose it on Montrezl Harrell. I should throw into that mix as well at 5,200. You lose that on him, you lose it on Turner as well. So a lot more flexibility on the FanDuel slate with those guys today.
All right, we've got let's see, another super chat. Okiki in a lineup with Cole Anthony already, or Lem, Lem. So I'm assuming Len with Anthony. I'm not sure what that is, but I'm assuming Okiki with Cole Anthony already, or Len with Anthony. I'm assuming.
Just asking, should
I
he
would
put
probably
Alex Len in, I guess, anticipating the late game potential.
There you go. Yeah, LEM, same thing. Whatever. I don't know what those swaps would be. I mean, you're basically saying Alex Len, he's going to start. Like that's the impression that I have for this situation is Alex Len is still going to be starting here. He started the last 3 games. I don't see that changing. But he's not my most favorite play here on this slate. Again, he's at center, and Bobby Portis, who I want to talk about here to kind of round it out, I'm obsessed with, and I'm going to be getting to at 70% plus of lineups. So that's going to be the path I take. How about you, Terry?
Yeah, he wasn't really in the mix for me. Alex Len, like I mentioned, I was just going through that rotation of different center power forward options. He's at a different salary tier, 4,100 on FanDuel, 3,200 on DK. If you get him into the mix, it's perfectly fine. We've got him projected right now for 23 minutes. If that goes up, you see a little bit more. He's a 0.9 guy for the year and 0.92 over the last 3. So he can produce around 20 and change points, which is fine for that money. You want to get a little upside. He's got a nice little tidy 28% boom score probability on DK. So it's perfectly acceptable. I just like getting to these other options so much more. There's just so much more raw scoring potential and significant upside through these other guys. So it's just not where I'm drawing my value today.
No doubt about it. I got to fix one thing here with the Milwaukee side. If there's any other question, can you touch on that here super quick? Because I need to put a cap on Mr. Connaughton so I don't get him in 75% of lineups. That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that you wanted to talk about Bobby Portis. I think it makes sense to, maybe talk about him and go back to that Milwaukee rotation and just kind of look at the entire thing again. So you're saying you want to strip out Connaughton. Are you distributing those shares to other Milwaukee guys, or is it just, I don't want that much Pat Connaughton? I mean,
I don't want that much Pat Connaughton. And again, we still have a long time until we get that starting lineup. I'm not sure who that other piece is going to be, but I'm giving a boost just to make sure that I'm going to have some, whether it's Mamukashvili, or whether it's going to be George Hill. Yeah, see, that rolled off the tongue now that time, finally. I only took like a month and a half here, but I'm just looking at it as a situation where we're kind of going to have the positional ability to swap here. I'm not completely going overboard. KJ Martin, I'm a little bit lower on as well, just because I don't want to be giving up that roster spot to a spot in this early session, even though there's no doubt about it. You should have a lot of exposure to this early wave of window of games.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there was so much value coming out of that Houston game, in particular in the early spot here, that you have to have that. There were values on the Cleveland side of things, certainly values on Orlando and the Miami-Philly game. So, yeah, I mean, there are significant values. And to further the point about the guards and the like the shooting guard, small forward, the point guard, shooting guard guys, a lot of those guys are coming out of these 3 games as well. So that's an important factor in the late swapping capabilities. Maybe think through I want to leave more of my, I want to grab a few shares of guards in some of the 8 and 9 o'clock games just to have some ability to move around to different positioning, or think through like, all right, what am I leaving open if these spots are locked, and maybe don't put too many of them together in lineup constructions. I know it's a little late in the game to be talking about strategic lineup construction like that.
It's okay.
It's kind of an important way to look at the,
I put some caps on stuff. I got more Okiki than I wanted. I'm not happy about that. He's 3,200 though. He's not going to bust my day. I hate the play. I just ended up with it because I didn't have time to fix as much stuff as I wanted to. That's what happens on an 11 game slate where you want to be hosting, you want to be answering people's super chats. I'm giving up some expected value for all of you, which is why you all need to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. That's how you can reward me for Christmas. We are now 10 days away from Christmas Day. That's stupid to say out loud, isn't it, Terry McBride?
Yeah, especially considering it was like 60 degrees here again today. It's a little bananas, but I don't want to get into a climate change debate. I saw what the debate about others. I saw what the debate about other long settled science did to the chat earlier. So let's not go down that road.
Yeah, we're gonna probably just go talk about PrizePicks now. I think that's probably the best. That seems like the best course of action here. Actually, before we even do that, I do want to pull up the. I want to pull up the ownership. I'm pulling up the $15 over on DK. I didn't play a ton over on FanDuel here today, so maybe you want to take a look at that one for us. Yeah, and take a look over there. I don't know where my lineups went here. Oh, it's just taking me a second to update it here, but want to go through some of the plays that we have from this early wave because they are definitely fascinating, no doubt about it. Lauri Markkanen, 16.2%, did not get nearly as high as I expected. Kevin Love, for 17.3%. He got a little bit of steamed. I think he was still a decent enough play, not my favorite. Gabe Vincent, 13.3%. I ended up getting to quite a bit more of him than I was expecting. Şengün, 47.2%. So he's under 50% for anybody who was kind of curious about that. Max Strus, 14.8%. GJ Augustine, 6.7%, 3,500, should play a lot of minutes. Maybe that's a spot that looks good, but Jared Allen, 8,300, 10.6% here in the $15. We have some really fascinating rostership. Okiki got all the way up to 25%. Duncan Robinson, 8.2%. Going through some of these lineups, I mean, there are a lot of great spots. It looks like Terrence Ross, 7.8%. Who's sticking out to you here over on the FanDuel slate?
You didn't say the one I'm most curious about, the one that we talked about and guessed at during the show. I've got PJ Tucker on FanDuel at 9.7% ownership.
Jesus Christ.
So even higher.
I don't have a single share of him, so I have to click on other people's lineups kind of to
that's what I'm doing. I only played 3 lineups in full disclosure tonight because I knew I'd be on a chaotic show.
Oh my God.
I saved myself.
Found a PJ Tucker. 9.5% PJ Tucker over on DK in the $15. We had him projected under 1%. And again,
but we had him projected at 6 to 8 on the show. So like the live, ongoing discussion, we said like 6 to 8. So I think we nailed that one.
10%. I feel pretty good. It's almost like we do this every single day, Terry McBride. It's almost like we're playing every damn slate. We're like EMAC 2024. No slates off. No slates off.
These things coming.
A little bit of that.
Daniel Dice going 3.2% on to 3,800 on FanDuel. That at that ownership, that maybe is a little bit intriguing. I wasn't really into the idea earlier, but that low owned, you can take a couple dart. You could have taken a couple dart throws. I wouldn't have minded. Şengün 30.9. Kyle Lowry 40.3.
Kyle Lowry 17.7% on the DK slate. That is.
He's like 1,000 and change more over there, right? He's 7,000.
Yeah, he's 8,100, but I don't care. I have more than that. I have a lot more than that.
I think it makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Ooh, baby.
Darius Garland, 20%. Where'd Wendell Carter come up? He's a guy we didn't end up touching on really. And he was at least sort of interesting in the mid-range. 10% on FanDuel at 7,000.
I think part of it is that he was kind of already put in a price. It comes down to position too. I mean, you had so many guys, whether it was Şengün, Bobby Portis, there's only so many spots that you can have for some of these guys. And now Wendell Carter is up to 7,500 over on DK. I think it's a little bit of sticker shock. I think he could definitely be somebody that could go nuts here in this spot, but even projecting him out for 35, I was getting to just about none. I have 2% Wendell Carter Jr. And yeah, you would think with Mo Bamba off the floor, it would be very, very helpful for him, but just enough other places that I wanted to go at the center position, at the power forward position that I really didn't get to much. And it's interesting. We're talking about it after the fact. Maybe I'll regret it, but I think I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's just one of those guys that it wouldn't totally shock me if he was in a bunch of lineups up at the top of standings later on in the day. Just one of those guys I probably wouldn't have gotten to either, just by virtue of having that many guys at those positions that I really liked, like we were talking about, rotating through those power forward center spots. So just one that kind of stood out when I saw the 10-ish% ownership. Jared Allen 16 and change, Garland 20%. Some interesting spots.
A lot of interesting spots. It's always fascinating to me. So we still have over 2,000 people there. Hit that like button, but we're going to be able to talk live as lineups come in. We are waiting on a massive, massive piece of news, and that is who that fifth starter, the fifth assumed starter, is going to be for Milwaukee. I think that that's a pretty darn important piece of news based on just a value piece that nobody else is really going to have access to. We're going to be around for 25 more minutes here. That game will lock here at 8 p.m. Eastern time. But regardless, hit that like button. We're going to talk some PrizePicks now here, of course. And I gave you guys the lead in here. PrizePicks, lots of props. And it is really fun to play over there. Super clean, super easy. Take a look as we're going through some of these plays here together, and head over to OddsShopper while you're at it too. Shop for the best NBA bets. You can basically sort whatever state you're in. It doesn't really matter because the PrizePicks will have their own line set for it. Sort by expected ROI and see some of the top plays that you have on the board. I'm looking at DeJounte Murray rebounds. Looks like the over 7.5 is a fantastic number to be getting to. Miles Turner rebounds, that just locked. Looks like an under is a solid play there. Yusuf Nurkic in the late night hammer, under a 15.5 rebounds. We've seen those minutes be sporadic. I think there's a lot of really easy ways to be able, in less than 30 seconds, I threw a bunch of plays here together that really stand out on PrizePicks. But looking at this NBA slate, is there something that really jumped out to you, Terry, as like a can't miss play for PrizePicks today?
I'm just getting over to it now. Sorry, I was trying to get there in time.
Yeah, for me, it's
doing
just
the windup.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with the free throw props, and so I want to kind of start with this. I think it's always kind of my lead in here. Darius Garland's at 2. He's at 2. Bobby Portis is at 2. I think both of those numbers are just phenomenal. We're looking at free throws made. To say that I'm obsessed with Bobby Portis today is a little bit of an understatement. He's one of the largest stands I have. I don't know if he's going to end up 20% like we currently have him for, but I would really, really like that. The underrated fact is that you don't have DeMarcus Cousins out there either. And, Cousins has kind of been inserted as a guy that the Milwaukee Bucks trust right from the get-go here, has played some decent minutes in times, 13, 12, 13, 18. Mamukashvili is probably going to be a guy who's going to come in and play a little bit of that role, but Bobby Portis is going to need to be out there for his scoring. He's 7,100. That price has started to come down over on DK. And I'm just saying, he's somebody who's going to be involved offensively in a very, very meaningful way. Doesn't get to the line at a crazy clip, but there's a number of times I'm going through the box score. Giannis was out on the 2nd of December, 10 free throw attempts. We have another one where Giannis was out here, 4 free throw attempts. So in a limited sample, the last 2 games that I'm looking at there, I think there's an increased opportunity for him to get to the line simply because they're going to be playing through him above average. It's going to be Jrue Holiday, Bobby Portis. I love over on 2 free throws for Portis. All right. Now what sticks out to you, Terry?
That sounds like a great spot. And I'll go you one better. That Darius Garland one that you called out there, that makes a ton of sense to me too. He's averaging 2.4 free throws under totally normal circumstances, and he makes 89.2 of them. So that's right at his average. If he gets to the line one extra time, it's probably going in and you're probably there. So that's a pretty easy one to pick off there as well. I'll jump back over to our board here and let's pull up the old rebounds totals here, and we'll take the expected win rate and we'll sort by that. And let's see, Jakob Poeltl with an expected win rate of 80% on the under for 10.5 rebounds. Alex has him at 9.3. That one's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that makes sense. Looking at his minutes, they've been all over the place here, but I mean, 34 minutes last game is lovely. He got into a little bit of foul trouble early against Jokic. It looks like only 18 minutes there. They got the doors blown off of him. Only lost by 15, but I think it was worse from what I remember in that game. He's been playing low 30s minutes here, but you have the opportunity, like Derek White has just started to do a lot of rebounding of late here now too, 6, 6, and 8 in 3 of his last 4. So that's cutting in considering Derek White is constantly on the floor here for that team, starting to have some upside there. Keldon Johnson, it's just a healthier team. And now Drew Eubanks playing behind him there has been up to 20 and 14 minutes. We're looking at some minutes increase there for him as well. I mean, Thad Young is out of the rotation and then he just randomly shows up from time to time. And it's just so frustrating, but I digress. Jakob Poeltl, 10.5 is just a large number for a guy who has only reached double digits twice in the rebounding category in his last 8. So that's definitely a nice number. I think, according to Alex's projections, makes some sense as I'm just kind of talking through that as well.
Averaging 9.1 on the year. So it's well above the season average. And like you were saying, a lot of good rebounding teammates, DeJounte Murray, not to sleep on him as a rebounder, 11.5% rebounding percentage for the season too. So just a lot of guys who can grab the ball off the glass and make things happen. So I think it makes some sense to shoot for the under on that one.
Steve Buzzard, stick to sports in the chat, please. That would be ideal. I like sports. We're here to talk sports. So definitely smash that like button while you're at it too. Welcome to Awesemo.com. Here we go. Rest of the spots that we're looking at here. Darius Garland. I will say Garrison Matthews 0.5 assists is kind of interesting when you get DJ Augustine as the other guy out there. Can a guy who's on the floor that much just run into one? I guess that assist just came off the board here as I was talking about it. But 0.5 assists for Garrison Matthews. That just kind of looks a little jarring to me. Let me see what I had him projected for. 1.3. So I guess it's not like something crazy, but I mean, that's more than 0.5. I'll throw it out there.
For Garrison Matthews?
Yeah, he was at point. Whoa. Gary Harris scratched Wednesday. Are you serious? That's a ton of minutes. All right. My Okiki looks a lot better now.
Yeah, that suddenly got a lot better.
I mean, I kind of got stuck with him. I have 0.1 per. Okay. So 0.5. I had 211 lineups on DK today. I had one lineup with Gary Harris. So I will sacrifice that one at the altar.
That's a win.
Of my Chuma Okiki, who I had tons of. Oh, shit. We have Hampton in the starting lineup now.
That just got wacky. There's nothing we can do on that one. That
so weird. Yeah, there's not a single thing on planet Earth we can do. I have 0 shares of Hampton. I mean, he was projecting out for 15. What a wacky thing to have happening there.
0.79 fantasy points per minute for Hampton for the season, 49.6% true shooting. Gee, thanks for starting him, guys.
I doubt it's going to be something that just burns you. He's not going to be that owned. It's an 11-game slate. Yeah. We have a lot of news left to go. If he puts up 40 and somebody's got him, congratulations. You got to get the other pieces of your lineup right. So there is that.
Congratulations on accidentally winning a tournament. I mean,
no kidding. JR, $4.99 super chat. Thank you. Dylan Brooks and Grayson Allen, or Devontae Graham and Norman Powell. It is by a landslide. Dylan Brooks and Grayson Allen for me. I don't know what site. It doesn't really even matter for me.
Yeah, 100% with you on that one. Norm Powell was a mix and match kind of a piece from the last I saw of him, and it looks that way again. He looks actually a little bit over-owned across both sites. So, yeah, not somebody I was really chasing today. I like the other side of that one a lot better.
Somebody just said, Cola, Hampton 0.05% owned on DK. That's hilarious. Yeah, Hampton was never – yeah, I mean, it's just you can't – I mean, it's whatever. I can't even believe that I think the most miraculous part of this entire thing is that I had 1 share of Gary Harris somehow.
Is it miraculous in that you had it or that you only had one? Which side of
it's miraculous that I had it, because you would think on this slate there's like no chance that I would get to Gary Harris. I think that's a flaw. Yeah, that is one lineup that is never going to be found or heard from again. I guess he was 4K projected for 34 minutes. I think I'm somebody who kind of gives a boost to some of those guys. Just, if they're going to be sub 1%, you can run into some randomness as long as you're on a floor. Really hard to get fantasy points on a bench. I've heard that before.
For sure. Yeah. If you're seeing the court, you have a chance. That's the rule of the land here. So yeah, it makes some sense to that, I guess, with randomness on and everything, maybe he pops into a couple at that price across 1,000 lineups, 2,000 lineups. If he was in, 5 or 6, maybe something like, waiting leverage and waiting ownership would have floated him to the top. So yeah, it makes sense, I guess, that he comes up in 1 or 2.
God, Terrence Ross looks a lot better. It's just, that's the tilting one. Cause I didn't. Yeah. That's a lot of minutes.
Tell me how many shots going in the first quarter before we.
Yeah. I'm just saying 34 minutes. Not that, Terrence Ross was still projected for 31 and he's got to make shots. Big if for Terrence Ross. So let's go back.
I'm so sour on the guy. I'm so sour on. He was a guy I liked to get in at various times.
Terry, you're like a nice, orderly human being, and you're visibly upset about Terrence Ross. It's crazy.
I mask my emotions, man.
Yeah, so stupid. Scratching is fine, but not after lock. Hopefully nobody had Harris. You're not going to have Hampton. I would say in terms of scratches, this is probably the least meaningful one that we're going to maybe ever have.
Yeah, there's nothing we can do about it, and nothing that's really impacted over that, except for making the Okiki shares maybe a little bit better, and hopefully not the other one.
Not the Terrence Ross. Yeah. Again, I didn't even like Okiki. I'm going to kind of feel a little bit dirty if this ends up panning out. But let's go back over to PrizePicks, our sponsor here. Looking at some fantasy point totals, it's looking pretty. There aren't a ton of pieces. Like I like over a 36.5 for Bobby Portis, but I'm already so invested in DFS that I would much rather head over to some of the props that we have here. I'm looking at 3-pointers made and kind of comparing and comparing. We have the projections. So if you have Awesemo Plus, you're able to see right on the projection screen what we have. You can compare those and find some really positive EV bets. You can head over to oddshopper.com, which is the easiest place to find some of the best bets on the board. I'd love to know who Steve Buzzard's on. He's hanging out in the chat. We might as well utilize one of the top DFS players in the entire world, a guy who's so sharp with the projections and everything else. I want to know who Steve Buzzard likes on PrizePicks here for tonight. Get a real popular play on in there, but find something else in there for me, Terry. Who else do you like here for PrizePicks tonight?
I mean, Steve is pretty sharp on the prop bets too, and we've got some stuff in the works out there for people who like some sharp betting picks. So keep an eye on the site. You might see some new things pop up in the near future. A little bit of a tease there while I look around the board. So you had mentioned the fantasy point totals, and I jumped over to that one. I was just taking a look, and a guy that we talked up quite a bit, Bobby Portis, at a 36.5 fantasy point total now. Is that's an interesting one. We've got him projected. So let me find him again on the board here. We've got him projected at 38. So that's pretty tight. We've got him going over, but I think that line got pretty efficient. So that was one that just stood out from by virtue of a guy we had talked a lot about. Drew Holiday, 40.5. We have him projected at 44.7 on the FanDuel slate. So maybe that's one with that similar scoring that we can maybe attack the fantasy score one on Drew Holiday a little bit. I liked him to go over that 40.5 mark there. So a couple interesting ones from the Buck side of things with everything changing with 50 and change minutes to get those plays in.
Okay. I'm kind of going through. I've got a number of different spots that really stood out to me here. I want to talk some NFL too, because again, this is the PrizePicks show. And we could do whatever we want because they have so many different things.
Lineups.
One of the fun things to do is to be able to play multiple sports in your parlays, to be able to put 2, 3, 4, 5 tickets together here, win up to 10x your money. Also, if you play 5 plays, if you get 4 of 5 right, you're still doubling your money. If you get 3 of 5 right, whereas you're definitely getting skunked if you play at a traditional sports book, you're still getting 0.4x of your money back. That doesn't sound like a lot. But over the long run, if you're missing on some props, if you find some advantageous plays and they just don't pan out, you're at least getting something back on your money. You're not getting completely zeroed out. So I do find some of those 5-point plays really fun to be able to get to. And again, there's a boost for playing Porzingis. So you know what? Actually, the next thing we should look at, let's take a look at some Porzingis props. See which one is the most beneficial that we can get to. I'm looking at 21.5 points here for Porzingis. Looking at his rebound total, we have 8.5 over on PrizePicks. For assists right now, we've got 2. So 2 for Porzingis seems like a low number with Doncic off the floor, but not somebody who's going to be out there distributing very meaningfully here. And then 42 for a fantasy score. I think that seems that's probably the most efficient out of all of them. 2 for a 3-point prop. Terry, out of all of these, which one do you like the most for this 25% booster on Porzingis?
God, those were all efficient.
I know.
I was trying to track them as you were reading them off on our betting tool here, and they were all right in that 50 and change range. One that was coming in as 45% on the over, and the over that was listed at 45% was 2.5. And I believe you said it was 2 over on PrizePicks. So maybe we squeezed out a little bit of edge was the assists one. I don't know that I necessarily love that one though. Let me just pull up Porzingis on the threes because we got to go to different spots here. What was the line for threes?
2.
He's making 1.7 a game, taking 5.6 a game. He's only making 29.7% from 3 this year. He's been a better 3-point shooter, if memory serves, than that over the course of his career. If he knocks down a couple 1-2 extra without Doncic on the floor, seemingly with more usage available for him, I think there's a shot that he gets to that he cracks that too. That's not a terrible one.
Okay, that's not terrible at all. Again, part of it is that if you're getting a 25% boost on your payout, even a line that's efficient is no longer efficient because you're getting a boost on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It's like getting plus 125 on your money. So for me, even if you're going to be playing an efficient line in that kind of a regard, if you're going to be getting a boost on your payout, there's at least something to be said for playing it anyway, which is why I wanted to go through some of these. Because if we can find something like that might be a little bit more efficient. And we know that he definitely takes more of a jump up absent Doncic than what Doncic does absent Porzingis. So I'm looking at that as definitely something where maybe being a little bit more bullish on that. I'm surprised I didn't get much of him, but I mean, his price has definitely started to soar up here of late on all of the sites.
He's a guy that priced correctly a lot of the time. We've got him projected just around
now.
Yeah. He just comes in at fair value on most slates. There's a lot of situations where I say, I'd like to get him in there, and it just doesn't necessarily work out. There's always better values that rotate through those spots. We do have him projected at 2.12 threes made, though. So we do have him going slightly over the threes, and I think there's room for more.
All right. Yeah, we have so we got Will Barton in, we got Aaron Gordon in. I think that those were both kind of expected. Will Barton illness, Aaron Gordon back. Makes sense to me.
Nothing crazy there.
Yeah, just wanted to check in on everything. I'm taking a look at the games here too as they're going on. Always a fun thing that Greg and I do where we kind of chop up duties on who's watching which games. Houston knocked down a bucket here, 12-9. Seeing some of the starts here. We got Jayshawn Tate with 4-1-1. Dean Wade, 5 points, 2 rebounds. God, everybody made fun of me for getting to a little Dean Wade. I don't see anybody in there now. He's still going to finish with like 6 fantasy points. That's how it's going to work. He'll have a turnover and then just sit. But Dean Wade, I thought, had a possibility of legitimately playing 30 plus minutes here. And that's always going to be enticing if they're going to just have no attention whatsoever. Jayshawn Tate with a steal and an assist there to finish that out. So Jayshawn Tate off to a really nice start. Armani Brooks, 3-1-1. Daniel Tice, 3 boards here. Kevin Love already in the game here for Lauri Markkanen at the 6:45 mark here of the first quarter. So something to keep an eye on. You always want to be reacting to how your lineups are doing throughout the night. Heading over to Miami here. Gabe Vincent, 4-1. Kyle Lowry, 2-2-1. I just like seeing the Kyle Lowry not in foul trouble early. That's helpful. Joel Embiid, 4-1-5. So 4 points, 5 boards.
That could be problematic.
That could be
11.5 on 11.5 on FanDuel with 6.5 left in the first, and 2.3% owned.
Here's the thing. He's going to need to go for 70 in some kind of regard because Bobby Portis and Jokic are just so high up on my board that it was almost impossible for me to prioritize Embiid here on an 11 game slate. Does he have a massive upside? Sure. Yeah, he absolutely does. But still, you're probably pretty happy if he's low owned here at this spot. Of course, everybody wants to early sweat, and I'm happy to oblige. Let's go back over to NBA here because we're talking PrizePicks. Looking at anything for news here from Sacramento. Of course, we can talk about props from a late swap perspective. We can talk about DFS from a late swap perspective. I think what's really underrated is talking about props in the event that you get certain news to break. Harrison Barnes, 5.5 rebounds, 5 rebounds for Alex Len. I don't think there's really anything to mine out there. But looking at some of these points props on Sacramento guys, we've got, where did they go? Alex Len, 7.5 points here. Harrison Barnes, 14.5. Tyrese Halliburton, 11.5. De'Aaron Fox, 21.5. I think getting Terrence Davis into that starting lineup for any reason would definitely be a knock offensively to a lot of these guys. They don't seem like they're priced to have Terrence Davis alongside them. Is that something you might consider shorting any of those numbers on PrizePicks today?
Yeah, that makes sense to attack a situation like that where assuming you get that news, I mean, it's something you can absolutely chase. And if you see him in, then you can know that, you're probably targeting like a Barnes and a Halliburton, maybe for coming under. The Len one, you can certainly target with him in the Metu news. So definitely a lot of different ways to take a look at that situation and play the ones that make sense, play the ones that are getting the bump for the opportunity. And that's the way that we always want to be attacking NBA, really.
I'm seeing a back and forth on Ellington threes right now. That's not what I expected to look at, Chad, because I was wondering Loco was going back and forth. Shout out to Loco. The news got himself a winner of fantasy football matchups, king of all. I'm upset about that, but it's just like a personal problem that I have because he beat me, and fair and square. It's disgusting. Yeah, it's always nice when you have Cooper Kupp, Matt Stafford, and James Conner going in the late night hammer or in the last game of the slate when I was up like 55 or 60 and I end up losing. It was just. And I had Van Jefferson going to, and the Rams kicker who put up 14. So I really hate football at the moment, but I digress. We'll talk a little football to round out PrizePicks here, but they're talking about the 3-point props here. Is Ellington at 3 or at 2 3-pointers? Because I mean, That's a big number. I know that we have Malik Monk in health and safety protocols. It is not available on PrizePicks right now. I'm seeing Carmelo Anthony at 1.5, LeBron James 2.5, Anthony Davis 0.5. I will say with AD in there, he was kind of probably a last resort piece that they needed to get in here. I got to a little bit in DFS purposes just because it's massive upside from a guy in Anthony Davis every single time he touches the floor. And he's at 3.8%. That's just a low number to be looking at. But I got to be thinking with Monk out, Taylor Horton Tucker out, Dwight Howard out, Carmelo Anthony might be somebody to actually invest over 1.5 threes. What do you think about him?
Oh, Carmelo. I was pulling up Wayne Ellington. I thought we were looking that direction.
Ellington isn't on the board here as I'm looking at it. So I just wanted to
because I was going to say he would be interesting taking 5 a game. But Melo also, if there's a little bit of increased opportunity, he's playing 27.7 minutes a game and taking almost 6 threes a game, 5.9, making 2.4 of them a game, 41.2% from 3 on the season. So with the idea that maybe he takes a couple more, makes a couple more, absolutely, that's one that we can go to.
No Bucks or Thunder lineup yet. Yeah, it's going to be a sweat. And let me tell you, I'm going to be scrambling to get all of that in whenever it comes out here.
I played 3 lineups.
Don't go anywhere. I mean, we have to leave. We're leaving in 5 minutes here, but don't go anywhere. You need to be by your laptop to be able to react to everything that happens there. And we're still going to be around for another 2 hours looking at some King stuff. So hop in the premium Discord as well. I know a lot of guys talking NBA all day. You'll be apprised of any news that comes through, especially because the news he's got it in the premium Discord. He's keeping you guys updated. So check that out here as well. I'm going to do a little bit of swap optimizing here for some of my lineups here, but PrizePicks, 0.5 3-pointers made for Anthony Davis. So again, that's not my favorite thing in the entire world. Definitely hasn't been outside as much as what you would want there, but I like the 1.5 for Carmelo. I think he might see a little bit of a minutes boost, and I have no desire to play him in DFS. I think I have like 1 share of him as well. I have the Gary Harris allotment of shares for Carmelo Anthony here. But I think that's a decent enough price prop on PrizePicks. Anything else for you on PrizePicks from an NBA perspective?
We can poke around the AD one, just taking a look at that one. He's taking 2.1 a game, but he's only making 0.4 a game, 19.2% on the season. Ouch. Not too good from outside for Mr. AD. Let's see, jumping around the board. Actually, I've got what about 1.5 threes for Gordon Hayward? Just kind of stood out in a name I didn't mention all day long. So why don't we pull that one up?
Let's do it.
Let's take a look.
Why not?
Gordon Hayward sitting at 4.6 attempts on the season, making 1.8 per game. It's a 1.5 line. Nothing I can think of off the top of my head would really change his overall situation from his norm. He's making 38.3%. He's been a better shooter than that, I believe, in a couple of years of his career from deep. So I think there's a reasonable expectation that he can approach that line. If he takes a couple extra shots, certainly one that he can cruise over in under normal circumstances here. Poke around a little bit more. Let's see. We've got 12 minutes left on that Indiana game, the Pacers spot here. Karis LeVert sitting at 1.5 threes. Apparently, I'm just in love with the threes now.
How about speaking of threes? Duncan Robinson, 3 of 4 from 3, 11 points, 2 rebounds. Hello, how are you this fine evening? I am well, thank you for asking.
I played more Gabe Vincent than I did Duncan Robinson, and a lot of times that's the other way around. So it makes sense that Dunk's making his shots tonight and not those nights.
I have 15%. I have nothing outrageous. My slate really doesn't begin until Bobby Portis and Drew Holiday hit the floor. I know they'll be popular, but I mean, I just have such an irrational amount of them. Actually, it's an irrational amount. You could have 100%, and I think it would be rational on this slate. So I take that back.
And 15% is certainly a nice little chunk of a guy who gets out to a hot start, probably not crazy owned in a tournament. So, I mean, that's something that could be tournament shaping, right? That could give you a nice trajectory toward the top of standings. And then you need a lot of your chalkier plays to fill in. And then you just got to hit a couple of the right values. And all of a sudden you got a contending lineup on your hands. So that's a pretty good start and a nice little share of a guy who is, like I said, it's a guy I've gotten to in the past, but have not really been overly aggressive about the last few weeks just because of kind of underperformance in general and the emergence of some of those value guys.
Patrick Mahomes, minus 160 for the under of 0.5 interceptions here in this spot against the Chargers. Yeah, he's been throwing a lot of them, but I'm looking at a number of different books. I wanted to give you guys one NFL play to kind of pair alongside it here. Oh, they took that off the board. So Fancy that. You can't even get it anymore here on PrizePicks. 0.5 interceptions. I was looking at that. So if Patrick Mahomes shows back up there, you can maybe go less than on that. But otherwise, oddshopper.com is the best place to go find some of these NFL props. I know that they're extremely popular over there. NBA props are really taking off here as well. And that's what you want to be doing at PrizePicks, using oddshopper.com, cross-reference the projections that we have over there, and use them to play over at prizepicks.com. So much fun. Thank you so much to them for this extra half hour to talk about their product, to kind of go through the NBA as lineups are coming in. Make sure you guys are sticking around to, hang out in the premium Discord, chat about everything as we get that Milwaukee news in here. But Terry and I are going to head on out. We're going to make our way to the exit sign. Thank you so much for hanging out, Terry. Any final words for the people?
Appreciate it to everybody who's hanging out. It's always fun muting people in the chat, but keep it to non-politics from now on in the chat, you guys. We want to just make this a fun, happy kind of community where everybody just shoots the shit about NBA and doesn't have to worry about all those things. Keep that stuff for your Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner tables or whatever holidays you celebrate.
You know what? Don't do that. I would appreciate for my family not to do such things. Actually, I can't go home for Christmas this year, but it's just fine. Everybody, thank you so much. Hit that like button on the way out here. Hit the subscribe button as well. Thank you so much to Tyler Zander, our good friend Tyler Zander, hanging out there, producing this show. Did a fantastic job. It was almost like Jordan Klein was doing it. We'll see you guys out of here. I'm Eric Lindquist. We're gone. He didn't like that very much. It's fine.